work-oriented Jordan Klein. Not here to socialize, not here to kick it with his friends, not here to make us happy. Banging in his white t-shirt. Well, it's not even a white tee, it's a cutoff. It's whatever. Welcome, everybody, to the MLB Deep or Dive presented by oddshopper. I'm Eric Lindquist. Excited to be talking through this MLB slate. It's Monday, August 22nd. For those that can't read the date in the corner of their computers, but hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell as we get started. I'm excited because I always like these Monday shows. I like these Wednesday shows now that I get to do. I will say I kind of preferred the live before lock that I got to do with him last week because it's fun to watch him melt a little bit. At Ship My Money DFS, that's Adam Scher over there. How you doing, my dude?
Doing pretty well. Hoping this week goes better than last in terms of baseball DFS results. So,
oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was not a good week last week. I'm really looking forward to the DraftKings qualifiers being over so that I stop losing a guaranteed $2,000 a day right off the bat on those. But I'm so deep in now, I'm just like, I have to just try and get there.
Is there a $13 today? I didn't look.
No, it's $195.
Is it $13 tomorrow?
I don't know.
Be helpful. You should know these. There is a $13 tomorrow. I knew it was tomorrow. I will definitely be playing in that one because, you know, I'm freewheeling, baby. I feel the opposite about last week that you do. But you know what? You love me all the same.
Oh, yeah. I already forgot that was last week. I just felt like it was longer ago.
Gee, thanks. That's what friends are for. In good times and bad times out. No? You don't know that song?
We're 2 minutes into the show.
Would you prefer You Got a Friend in Me? You got a friend in me. All right, let's talk baseball, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's just do that then. Cincinnati plus 195 at Philadelphia, 8.5. We got Reds, Phillies. Luis Cessa. It's going to be a bullpen spot. But Noah Syndergaard. He's like a minus 230 favorite. I don't believe that is something that should ever happen. He's got almost 20% ownership going his direction. I can't do it. Can you do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite spot to get to, but he projects well. He's relatively cheap. It's a good matchup against the Reds. There's other guys that I would rather get to that are similarly priced, but at 7,800, I'll end up taking my chances at least somewhat on Syndergaard.
That dynamic just got my like. I like to think that that's what you're here for, is you're watching Adam have no reaction ever to my ridiculousness. Zero. Not even a little bit. But then I get these little laughs and it makes me live a little bit inside.
All right, I'll have to cut those out.
Okay. Gee, thanks. It's literally just going
to... I didn't realize they were encouraging you.
What about weather? I didn't see any weather here. Is there weather there? It's
supposed to be okay. The only one that I think, at least as of right now, I mean, keep in mind, it's the East Coast. Thunderstorms come out of nowhere at
Yankees.
Any time, anywhere. But the only one that seems potentially problematic now, I think, is the Yankees game.
Yeah, which Max Scherzer. I think people want to play him today, so that's kind of a problem. I feel just not very good about Noah Syndergaard at this kind of an ownership. Whenever I see him popular, you know what I do? I generally stack against him, and I don't care that it's Cincinnati in this spot here. Says that we don't need to talk about because he's not going to pitch very long here, but it is a bullpen spot. And Philadelphia has some bats that we do want to kind of take a look at here. But starting with the Cincinnati side, I'm assuming you're on board with me where it's like, hi, anybody with speed, come on down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, somebody had mentioned it on one of the previous shows when Syndergaard pitched. JT Realmuto is better at throwing out runners than Max Stassi. So, like, it's going to be more difficult to steal on Syndergaard than it was. But considering how low that bar is, it's still somebody you can run on. Like, Realmuto throws well, but he's not somebody that's he can't just like shorten Syndergaard's delivery for him and make him choose to hold runners. So it's still going to be a good spot. In particular, Jake Fraley stands out leading off 2,500, has some power, has some speed, certainly can run on Syndergaard. He was like 30-something% owned yesterday, sorry, he was like 20-something% owned yesterday. Scored like 38 DraftKings points. That was a lot of fun, but still probably going to be popular today. He showed up in my early cash lineup. Stolen base upside, home run upside. You have Moustakas, who isn't fast, but is 2K and has some power from the left side. India is expensive, but I assume he would run. Nick Senzel will run. But yeah, I think Fraley is the guy that really stands out.
Say it with me. Rake free Fraley. Do it, or take a long drink of water. Either or, that's fine. Cool. Really fun doing this show with you today. Philadelphia on the other side needs to have some discussion points because it is a bullpen situation. Cincinnati, 4.9 ERA, highest bullpen ERA in baseball. You know where they also play all of their games? Cincinnati. Like, as weird as it is, going to Philadelphia, a little bit of a park increase for the pitching staff that's going to be coming in behind him here. I don't really like targeting these bullpen spots. I know you don't either, but we got to be looking at some of these elite hitters, no?
Yeah, I mean, I still think like the way I view bullpen spots is simply that like I think sometimes they get a little bit overstated in terms of, oh, they're facing a not very good starter and then the bullpen. And I think it's important to keep in mind that that's not necessarily a plus, but it's not like you should just look at a bullpen game and write it off and say like, oh, well, I can't play the Phillies here against the Reds or, against Sessa and the bullpen. It's still a high upside spot. It's just, I think, important to keep in mind the bullpen games aren't necessarily like, they used to sort of be like free squares where it was just like, oh, you're going to get a bunch of really bad relievers. And now it's like, for the most part, bad relievers just means that they throw 100 miles an hour and don't know where it's going as opposed to throwing 100 and knowing.
Yeah, so you either get 2 or you get 0, so it's not as enjoyable. Unless you're facing Josh Hader, in which case everybody gets to have a party.
Yeah, he's been shockingly bad.
I went through a little bit of that the other day just because I was curious from my own standpoint. Obviously, we have the same kind of dude that is born and bred. Well, we have the same networking individual from Milwaukee. And when they got rid of Hader, it was not the most popular thing that happened in the clubhouse. I know that to be true, but guess what? It worked out pretty well from a real life baseball perspective because he's been downright atrocious. Favorite bat from the Cincinnati side, not named Fraley. Yeah, so nobody.
Yeah, Fraley. Jake.
We go from a first name basis. I was going to say Friedel just because he can run, but maybe not because he's batting 7th, and that's ridiculous. Kyle Farmer. Jonathan,
yeah, but he's 3,900 and he's not a shortstop anymore.
Okay, well then how about a 2K Mike Moustakas? You had options.
Yeah, Moose would probably be my answer.
God, just participate in my games, okay? Jesus Christ.
Well, I was thinking, I was legitimately thinking.
Because, you were not thinking.
India would be my answer, but he's expensive. Senzel will run. He's 2K, but he's also hitting 6th. Moustakas, I don't think will run, but he's 2K hitting cleanup. So it's kind of just like trying to decide between those 3.
Favorite batter from the Philadelphia side?
Schwarber at 5,800. I do think it's worth mentioning that Alec Boehm has figured out how to hit major league pitching and is just hitting the living shit out of everything recently.
Still sucks at fielding, but batting third, hard to not like him. He had a nice 39 spot. So, I mean, him and Fraley, hopefully you had him. Smoke if you got him. Next game, whatever. This is just ridiculous. Let's talk the weather game and the weather spot. And the pitcher that I want to get to the most, if it allows me to, we got Max Scherzer on the mound for the Metropolitans, the Subway Series, heading to Yankee Stadium. Domingo Germán on the other side. And Max Scherzer, obviously, his ownership's going to come down if there's as much weather concerns as what there are. I saw Revin Koth was the person who decided to throw something in there and say that it might be Schmorange might be the make-believe color that it is at another place. But as I look at things, I think it'll be okay. But let's just assume a clean gameplay here. How does Max Scherzer stack up next to Urias and Springs, who are kind of the other 2 super popular pitchers?
So Urias is the other one in that sort of price range. DraftKings actually did get the Max Scherzer pricing correct today, getting him up to 11.3. Urias coming in at 10K. I think Springs is number 1 for me just because he's so much less expensive and he does have the really good matchup against the Angels. Scherzer, I think the ownership is more or less correct. Maybe getting even a little bit more than I would like here, because not only are the Yankees a really good offense, they're not the same offense in terms of strikeouts that they used to be. I mean, obviously, I guess you could say that lately they're not the same offense in terms of production either because they've been awful. But the hitters in the lineup are still generally good. But like Benintendi doesn't strike out a lot. Rizzo doesn't strike out. LeMahieu doesn't strike out. Donaldson doesn't strike out a ton. You don't have Stanton in there to give you that extra strikeout whenever he's not hitting a home run. So it does make it a little bit scarier there as well. The counterpoint, of course, is that Scherzer has the best strikeout percentage on the slate at 31.5%. It's not particularly close. Less than a 5% walk percentage, 3.27 xFIP. He's the most talented pitcher on the slate. I don't think there's any argument against that. So I think the ownership pretty much makes sense, but I might even come in a little bit lower than the field the way things stand right now.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, for me, it's one of those things where if the weather really gets people off of it here, and I don't think it's apocalyptic like I do right now, I think I might get to more of him just from a tournament perspective. It's obviously a risk thing where if you're risk averse, play the other two guys in massive quantities, avoid Scherzer entirely and hope that it rains out, or that the Yankees just can do Yankees things that they were doing. I don't know, all the way through July. It would seem until like the last couple of weeks, it's just been a train wreck. But maybe don't trade away your starting pitcher like Jordan Montgomery and then have to start a guy like Domingo Germán on the other side. Any Domingo Germán, it is a smaller slate.
I think it's a pretty tough sell against the Mets. And also, even though there's not a lot of really strong pitching on this slate, there are some arms in the like 7,500 to 9K range that I would just rather get to than him. So like right now we have Germán projected for about 4% ownership. I have him in the optimal lineup like 9% of the time, but that's still, a pretty low probability play where unless I really need a 7K pitcher in a particular lineup, or I really need to get a low owned pitcher in a particular lineup, I don't think I'll really end up getting there. Hasn't been very good in his limited sample so far this year. We do know that he has talent in his arm. He looked like a pretty promising pitcher back before injuries and suspensions. Basically took a couple of years off, but so far this year, only a 10.8% strikeout percentage against left-handed hitters. Again, a limited sample, but you have a lot of lefties in this Mets lineup. You have a lot of good lefties in this Mets lineup, and you have good righties too. So it's certainly not a spot that I'm too excited to get to Germán.
Yeah, I'm looking at Germán. The only way that I'm possibly going to get to any of him is if I'm playing a 5-man Brave stack. I can't imagine there's any other scenario where I even get remotely close to clicking on his name.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more likely scenarios for sure.
Yeah, I can't really justify anything else there. But let's talk the Mets bats, because I do think Germán's been very, very bad, as you said, around a 10% strikeout rate versus lefties. There's some decent lefties here. Nimmo, Lindor, switch hitter, Vogelbach now batting fifth, McNeil, Beatty coming up and has crazy power, even if it's not shown up. Other than the first game, he definitely hit a dong. But how do you feel about the Mets? Because I feel like they're going a little underappreciated on this slate.
So do I. We have them going pretty drastically under-owned in our top stacks tool. 7% chance of being the top stack, 2.5% projected ownership. I have similar numbers in mine as well. I like getting to them because they offer a pretty nice combination of value and upside. Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso are all relatively expensive. 3 of them above 5K. Nimmo at 4,700. But like if you can't afford Alonso, you can get left-handed $3,800 Vogelbach in Yankee Stadium. That's a pretty appealing spot to get to. McNeil's price is reasonable. Kana is cheap. Beatty is really cheap. So I think that it's not really that difficult of a lineup to get to in terms of balancing out some of those expensive guys with less expensive guys if you need to. There's a lot of power throughout the lineup. You're getting these left-handed bats, Nimmo, Lindor, Vogelbach, McNeil, and Beatty in Yankee Stadium, which is always really appealing. So I like getting to the Mets, especially if the ownership holds where it is right now.
Everybody's favorite guy, Sean V in the chat, saying that Domingo Germán has not given up a home run in his last 3 starts.
So he's due.
That's what I'm getting at. Yankees on the other side, no way I'm going to get to them.
I think they're going under-owned, but I also think that they're a lower probability stack than most other teams. I think I am a little bit higher on them than our top stacks tool. Right now we have the Yankees at 3% chance of being the top stack. I have them at like 5%. But still, you're still talking about a pretty low probability spot against a really good pitcher in Scherzer.
Sean's on. He will win all the money today, per usual, if the Yankees decide to go off, right?
Yeah, the Yankees Reds?
Yankees Reds combo. Put them together. What do you got? Bibbidi bobbidi boo. Anything else from this game for you?
Nope.
Cool. You guys want the top stacks tool? Do you want the top pitchers tool? Do you want all these great tools and content that Adam just referred to so splendidly that I will be referring to throughout the show? Because I do believe they're the best tools that we have on our site, period, end of story. And we're adding more tools to it. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I know they're for sure, when you guys have your 1v1, 2v2 questions, going to be pulling that up on screen here for the Live Before Lock show. A couple of new tools that we're working on, but get all of that right now, the Platinum Pass with MLB DD, 50% off your first week of any Stokastic pass. That's MLB DD directly on the screen there. If you want the top stacks tool, top pitchers tool, top batters tool, projections from both an ownership and from a point projection perspective, everything you could possibly want sitting there all in one place at stokastic.com. Sign up now using MLBDD. And no, Fantasy Cruncher, it's an add-on. It's not with the base package, but you know what? That is okay because you can use it on any optimizer. You could put it anywhere you possibly want. Plus, if you're hand building out a bunch of lineups, which I know a lot of you guys tune into the shows, ask us about hand building a couple lineups here or there. Sometimes good stuff happens in that regard. All of the tools and content can help you as a hand builder immediately every single time when you check out the projections. And now the player tool that we have, we can do 1v1 and 2v2 batter tools, stuff like that. It's just outrageous. Pitchers, we can compare pitchers 1v1 based on projection. It's incredible stuff here. So MLBDD, take advantage of 50% off your first week. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us at Stokastic Plus today. Cool. Next game. Third up, we're going to cruise right along today. And this is a biggie. Atlanta, Pittsburgh. Roansy Contreras, I thought he had some decent enough stuff, but only a 21.7% K percentage, giving up crazy hard contact. And who comes to town? The Braves. They're really popular. I don't know really what else to say. Jake Odorizzi on the other side. Any pitchers from this game for you?
No. If I had to go to one, I think it would be Odorizzi, just because it is a good matchup against the Pirates. It's not a particularly good pitcher. Odorizzi struck out 17.3% of hitters this year, 4.85 xFIP, but he's only projected for about 5% ownership. So I think he's going a little bit under-owned. I think Contreras is going under-owned as well since he's only projected for 1%, but I think he's a lower probability play than Odorizzi is just given the matchup.
Malakar, good read. Thank you, Malakar. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you having my back. Unlike certain people, like, I don't know, my co-host, my producer.
Shout out Jordan Klein. Appreciate Clayton giving the actual promo code that should be used.
It just feels right. No, Scott. How about no? Boss, need the info. Atlanta bats are really popular. Can you talk to me about them?
They are, and I think that they should be for a couple of reasons. One is just that Contreras doesn't appear major league ready. He is a highly regarded pitching prospect. He does have good stuff, like you said, but so far that's only translated to a 20.2% strikeout percentage, double-digit walk percentage, 1.5 home runs per 9, 4.72 xFIP. Righties have a 243 expected ISO and a 381 expected WOBA. Lefties have actually not been quite as productive, 168 expected ISO, 316 expected WOBA. But with this lineup, you're talking about a lot of really good righties. Matt Olson, Eddie Rosario's whatever, but he's also 2,200. Michael Harris seems good so far. But this is another lineup sort of like the Mets where the guys at the top are kind of expensive, but not even as expensive as the Mets are. But then as you go down the order, you start getting some cheap bats too that just make it really easy to fill out these stacks. Like Ronald Acuna and Austin Riley are both north of 5K. They're the only guys on the Braves that are. But I think you can argue that they're both still underpriced. Like Acuna at 5,400 probably should be a few $100s more expensive. Riley at 5,100, same thing. Swanson's 4,900. Olson's only 46. And then after that, the only other hitter in this lineup above 4K is Michael Harris at 4,200. D'Arnaud's 3K. Rosario's 2,200. Grisham 2,100. Grossman 2K flat. So you end up being able to build a lineup where, if you can afford it, you just go, you include all four of the top five or all four of the top four guys, and then one other guy to offset some salary. But then if you need to save some money, maybe you're going to Scherzer, maybe you're going to Urias, you can certainly use, Eddie Rosario, Vaughn Grisham, Michael Harris or something, and still have a high upside lineup because Harris has speed and power, Grisham has speed and power. It's just a really deep lineup, top to bottom, in a good spot. So even though they are getting ownership, I do think that they deserve it as well.
Yeah, Vaughn Grisham, my God. Get another hitter thrown into the mix here who's hitting the ball very, very hard. He's 2,100. I expect him to still be pretty popular. We have him at 12.3%. That seems pretty low. If that's going to be the number, I can guarantee you I get to tons of him.
Yeah, and it's just like they're going to be popular, but across the board, they basically have the top options at most positions. Like Acuna is a top outfield option. Swanson is a top shortstop option. Riley's a top third base option. I would say Olson is not, but that's mostly just because you have 2K flat Albert Pujols at the same position. D'Arnaud's a top catcher. Grisham is a top second base option at that price. So it's not like a situation where I think people are just making mistakes going to the Braves. I think it's just across the board. These guys are just like the best plays at their positions.
How many in cash?
5.
That's what I figured.
You could make a
Five
case for
or
four, I think.
four.
Like, what'd you say?
I said or four because there's
Yeah,
a build that
like
I have with four that
the
kind
the
of looks
top
good too.
the top one I have right now has five, but like if you wanted to make Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, there's absolutely no issue with that, and you would have four Braves.
Yep. Curious also, pitching wise, are you going to be avoiding Scherzer and Cash?
I mean, it depends on the weather.
Yeah.
I'm also not playing Cash today, but if I
Okay.
was, sure, like if weather's not a concern, I'd be playing Scherzer.
I just try to always put a couple in just for the people to talk through it, and so I can
Yeah, I mean,
sound somewhat
I
intelligent
built
about
them.
it. But
I built them. I had been posting head to heads, but then all the bad people stopped taking them, and so it just became, do I want to play McLovin for a few $1,000s a day? And I mean, kind of, but also not
but
really.
also I could go out and flip coins in my
Right,
backyard for thousands of dollars, and
right.
that would be fun too. It's basically what you're doing at that level, at least. Did you absolutely shove it to the dude who was talking shit to you on Twitter?
I think he quit when we were around even.
Quitters. It's not very nice. I have
But
a
yeah,
feeling if he's back for
there were
more
like
for
randoms
NFL.
that were coming in and taking like 500s and 1Ks and stuff, which was really cool. But the last few times I've posted, it's just ended up with me auto matching McLovin and like nobody else.
No, thank you. No,
Yeah.
thank you is the answer there. Let's talk Pittsburgh on the other side of this one because Odorizzi does have the ability to limit some hard contact from time to time. The fly ball pitcher, I can maybe find myself getting to a couple of these Pittsburgh Pirates. Brian Reynolds always shows up in everything that I do all the time. Marcano, he's been a guy who's just leading off and cheap. So there's that. Any Pittsburgh bats that stand out to you?
Yeah, I do think they look okay here. Surprisingly, Odorizzi's done a pretty good job limiting power this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not getting a lot of strikeouts, but then he's also limiting power. So kind of seems like maybe there's been a trade-off there. Only a 139 expected ISO to lefties and 143 to righties. But you do have cheap pricing here. You mentioned Brian Reynolds at 4,300. That's clearly a very high upside bat. Marcano leading off. He did lose second base eligibility, so that hurts a bit. And then also when you keep in mind, like, yeah, he's still 2K, but Jake Fraley is a $2,500 outfielder. Eddie Rosario is a $2,200 outfielder. It kind of just pushes him down the list a little bit, but still a decent value. I like the Pirates a little bit more this morning too, because you had in the projected lineup Castro hitting fifth and Cruz hitting sixth instead of sixth and seventh, but both of those guys still look okay as well.
Yeah. We got Newman, 3,200 there. He's a guy who's randomly started showing up for me too, but not really a team that I get to a lot of five-mans of, but always seems to be a team that's a lot of filler.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Kansas City that we talked about, what was that, on last Wednesday, Thursday, where we both kind of were running into the same thing where it's like Pasquantino all the time, and now I think he broke his hand today or something. Something bad.
Pasquantino broke his hand.
I think
that
so.
might be, maybe I'll stop rostering Kansas City every slate.
Probably not. I still am going to like every catcher that they have because apparently it's the only eligibility you're going to give to anybody. Sal Perez, Melendez, whatever. I guess he has outfield eligibility too. But anything else from this game for you? Because it's obviously a biggie.
No.
Play a lot of Atlanta.
Yeah, play a lot of Atlanta. Ryan Henderson asked in chat how I do against John Iver in chat or in head-to-heads. I don't play it. We don't play a lot. The only time we play is if we end up like randomly getting auto matched.
And that's not fun.
And I don't know the answer to how I've done against them. I know that typically we have the same lineup or one player different.
Yeah. At that level, and again, there are multiple times where we've talked about like our cash builds while we've been on shows or before a show or something. That's like, oh, did you get to the lineup with 800 left over like that one day? It's like, yeah, I did. Like that's what's going to happen. The best players are going to land on the best plays.
Yeah, like I would assume that if we just played every day for the season, at least in baseball, the only person making money is DraftKings.
They made enough. Don't even get me started on Rainmakers here because I will go on for years. You and I are both, we've heard it up to here, but whatever. Angels, Tampa Bay. We're looking at a very interesting spot here because the Angels get Mike Trout back in the mix. Yay! That's great. He also strikes out a lot, which is just kind of crazy to say at this point in time, around a 30% K percentage. Not that that's a whole lot better. I mean, you get Joe Adell, Jared Walsh, Mike Trout, all these dudes strike out right around 30% or greater of the time. That makes Jeffrey Springs kind of a can't miss option on this kind of a slate, considering the ballpark, considering the matchup, above or below the 39% projection that has him as the highest owned pitcher on the slate.
I think I'll be above. I expect him to be my highest owned pitcher. I think he's the best pitching option on the slate when you factor in salary. He's 7,700. He has the third highest strikeout percentage at 26.1%. 3.22 xFIP is also the best on the slate. He's pitching in Tropicana, only a 5% walk percentage. Ohtani not being in this lineup, I think, is actually a huge upgrade for him as well, because he's actually been really good against righties this year and has had some issues against lefties. 29% strikeout percentage against righties compared to 19% against lefties. 130 expected ISO to righties, 189 to lefties, 266 expected WOBA to righties, 359 to lefties. And there's a pretty obvious reason for the reverse splits there. And it's that he has a changeup he throws 43% of the time to righties that has a 22% swinging strike percentage, and he doesn't throw it to lefties. He has a slider that just doesn't get the same swing and misses. It doesn't get hit hard, but it's not the same pitch. So the fact that Ohtani's not in this lineup just makes it, I think, even better for Springs, which like goes without saying. But I guess the way, like, I actually would rather Ohtani not be in this lineup than Trout not be in this lineup.
Agreed.
If I could pick one of them. And so you're talking about a lineup that it's entirely right-handed, with the exception of Jared Walsh and Matt and Sierra. Neither of those guys are particularly concerning. Walsh has power, but he also strikes out a ridiculous amount. I just, it's baseball. Obviously, things can go sideways for one reason or another. But at this price and in this matchup, I have a really hard time not getting the Springs. I actually have him projected higher than Urias and not very far behind Scherzer.
Yeah, he's going to be my highest owned pitcher. I think I'm pretty positive that there was no Ohtani. They should just shut down Ohtani for the year, right?
Like, it was an illness.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, just why would you put him back out there and have him pitch and throw? Because he went from like 99 to like 92 yesterday.
He was throwing harder in the second. I saw him at like 97.
I quit watching after the first inning. I couldn't do it. I knew it was going to go very, very poorly, like 4 pitches into the game.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch a lot of the second, but I did see him at 97, and like he was sick, so I'm not
whatever. I'm upset. 100% lock button. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
I got money to burn.
90 something.
Fun day for us, that's for sure. None of this Tucker Carlson individual, right? Tucker Davidson, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I don't really see a way to get to him. Hasn't done much this year. 11.5% strikeout percentage, 16% walk percentage, 5.94 xFIP. Not over a particularly big sample, but doesn't look like somebody that I need to get to on this slate.
What did I say? Why would someone shut him down because of a stomach virus? Shut him down because you have nothing to play for, and you just want to protect him at all costs because he's a two-way player that if you have a healthy Trout, you can win a lot more games going forward. There's no point in having him pitch the rest of the year, at least. I'd just save his arm. Whatever. I'll just talk to myself. It's fine. I'm cool with that. Also, did you copy and paste this from the morning show? I would assume you would have a lot of the same takes as this morning. And if you didn't, there would probably be a problem with you. Yeah,
it would be weird if I had drastically different takes from...
I actually love getting to the Reds today.
Right, yeah. I this morning I thought Jeffrey Springs sucks, and then I took a nap and had an epiphany. Or this morning I thought he was really good, and then I took a nap and had an epiphany, and now I think he's awful.
Yeah, what a weird thing to say. But anyway, I would hope you would have some of the same ones. If you wanted to play Mike Trout against Jeffrey Springs, you could probably do such things. If you even landed on some Joe Adele, who's 2,100, I can't quit you. It's my Brokeback Mountain, that's for sure. But anything else from the Angels that stands out to you?
Rengifo has been getting an annoying number of my lineups. Well, actually not annoying because he's actually been producing. But the multi-position eligibility there is nice. But overall, it's just, I think, again, like I expect to have Springs in so many lineups that I doubt I'm going to have much of the Angels.
And Tampa Bay on the other side, kind of the more interesting spot because Davidson's not good. Even though some of his underlying peripherals, there we go. Way to go, Eric. English first language. 32.6% hard hit percentage. Talk to me about Tampa. Whatever.
I think Tampa looks decent. Obviously, I don't like the ballpark, but and Davidson wasn't bad at all at AAA this year. He made 15 starts for Atlanta through 80 innings, 3.32 xFIP, struck out like 27.8% of hitters. Yep. So I don't want to read too much into the fact that he's been god-awful in 6 major league appearances. But I do think that getting to some of the right-handed power in the Tampa lineup, namely Diaz, Arozarena, Paredes, and Ramirez 1 through 4, is somewhat appealing. But again, it's not a park that I really love getting to. There are certainly offenses on this slate that I like more.
Yeah. Tucker Carlson pitching would be a thing. He would be a righty. Tucker Davidson's a lefty.
I
Anything
get it.
else from this game from you?
No.
Okay, cool. Oddshopper.com. That's where you guys need to head for all of your sports betting needs day in, day out. Not just when I read this promo. It's not even me reading a promo because I'm literally just talking off the cuff because it's the easiest thing I can talk about in the history of humanity because I like to win money. And if you like to win money and you have legalized sports betting in your state, even if you don't have legalized sports betting in your state, it's so good to be able to kind of check into the projectors. The first thing I did today was I looked at Noah Syndergaard's K prop because I was very, very curious on where the books were going to kind of have him landing on today's slate. I had just straight to oddshopper.com. I have my email, I log in, and boom, I'm automatically on the homepage, able to look up everything that I need to for that given slate. You can see expected win percentage, expected ROI. You can see everything that you want in one easy to use place. There's tabs for MLB, NFL, NCAA football comes back this week. I know we're going to have Gajewski on the case in that department, NBA when that's back, NHL when that's back, and golf. Last time to be utilizing that here for a hot second. Well, actually, no, the season continues on, but the big event, we got the 30 for the FedEx Cup playoffs. Why it's not match play is beyond me, but that's a different conversation for a different day. The conversation for today is heading over to oddshopper.com, looking at the MLB board and winning money. I'm looking at the under of 3.5 strikeouts. That works for Prize Picks as well. For Tucker Davidson is his name. The under of 3.5, 65% expected win percentage. Automatically putting that in at Prize Picks, being able to look at directly at the sports book and be able to bet exactly where the best line is every single day. So easy to use, so simple. Look at that. Urias all the way up to 7.5. The under of 7.5, 75% expected win percentage. Smoke if you got them. Definitely take the under of that one as well. But these are easy kind of plays that you can see on the board at OddsShopper day in, day out. Head there right now while we're on this show. Find a couple of the top bets there on the board and start winning money. Thank you to all the great guys. Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. We've got DeColts. That is Steve Buzzard. We've got Sean's on. We've got Eddie Lai. We're talking some of the best DFS minds that are putting projections to play for you in the sports betting world day in, day out. No better time than now to go put in your email address, sign up over at OddsShopper, and start winning a little cash. So that is oddshopper.com. Enjoy, my people. We continue along with the MLB slate. We've got the Rangers and the Twins. Cole Reagans on the mound. He's a lefty. Sonny Gray, he's a righty. He's good. Cole Reagans not really. This is kind of the guy that I'm having a tough time getting away for tournament purposes. We've now seen him get over 90 pitches 2 of his last 3 outings. That had been really my major hindrance of rostering Sonny Gray in any capacity for the last however long. It's just been that pitch count. I don't expect 10 strikeouts going forward like we saw against Kansas City, but it's not like Texas is some abysmal matchup by any means. What is your Sonny Gray interest on today's slate?
I'm always interested in Gray, and today's not an exception. There is one tournament pitcher that I like a little bit more, I think, and at least when you factor in ownership. But Gray looks good. He's been good all season long in terms of just limiting production, 3.6 xFIP. But you're seeing that strikeout percentage come up at, to 24%. And it's something that I talked about before that I thought you would see it come up because we have a track record of him being a better strikeout pitcher than we had seen this year. And you've just had a really weird season for Gray where he was limited at the start of the season because of the abbreviated spring training. Then he had injuries, then he came back, then he had an injury, then he came back. So he hadn't really gotten into like a consistent rhythm. And you're finally seeing that now. He is getting some more strikeouts. The matchup against Texas, there are strikeouts here. It is also a relatively dangerous lineup, at least, like 1 through 5. Calhoun's not bad either. But Gray actually has better strikeout numbers against lefties than righties. And the reason is that he has a curveball that he throws 46% of the time and is able to use very effectively against lefties. So 25.2% strikeout percentage there. I think it's a really good, I think it's a good strikeout spot. I think he's a really good pitcher. I like getting him here. There is one pitcher in this price range that I think is going a little bit under-owned compared to Gray, though.
Jordan Klein didn't flash a picture on the screen, did he?
I wasn't watching.
Okay, good. Just watching you. None of that goofiness today. I'm serious, Eric, today now. Dead Thank serious. God. Oh, it's not very nice.
Somebody said no NFL Showdown show. It's 5. I don't know. Are we having an NFL Showdown show? It certainly wouldn't be now anyway.
Wouldn't be now, and it's not happening today. So no, sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I don't make the schedule. We don't need it. It's a showdown preseason show. You can do it. Nicorette can help. Speaking of the person who needs to quit smoking in the chat. That was a joke for you. Let's continue on, shall we? Texas, Cole Reagans is on the mound there on the other side. I can't imagine that I get to this guy.
No, me neither. Decent, or I mean, seemed okay in the minors, but
Yeah.
certainly hasn't so far in the majors. Limited sample, so obviously could turn around. Only 3 starts so far. 8 starts at AAA, 43 innings for Texas. He had a 4.71 xFIP, struck out 27% of hitters. In the majors so far, only a 10.9% strikeout percentage through those first 3 starts. And he's got another difficult matchup here against a right-handed heavy Minnesota lineup that has a lot of good hitters in it.
Oh, yeah. A lot of good hitters up and down the entire order. I wish it wasn't Sandy Leon there in the catcher spot. We could get some Gary Sanchez in our life, but whatever. You can't have everything in life.
When did Tim Beckham come back?
What?
When did Tim Beckham come back?
Like literally today.
Oh, okay. I was like, I hadn't seen that name in a long time.
Yeah. He came back yesterday. He had 1 at bat yesterday, I know. Trying to remember. It was a sad game. My parents were there. It was bad stuff.
He's been playing for, I didn't realize he's been playing for like the whole month.
Maybe. Has he really? I just know he had 1 at bat. Let me look it up.
Yeah, he had. So, I mean, he played the 15th with 0 at bats, 1 at bat the 13th, 4 on the 10th, none on the 7th, 5 on the 5th.
Nothing like getting those reps in. You know, 3 weeks of nothingness from a guy that we actually need to have maybe do something. I mean, we just are depleted in a lot of ways. It's kind of sad when you think about no Kirilloff, no Garlic, no Larnach. Miguel Sano weighs 400 pounds. Like a lot of problems going on with us right now.
Yeah. 10 games for Minnesota this year, 20 plate appearances.
It's not
prior to that, no major league games since 2019.
I really can't get to anything from Texas today. I'm not going to.
I think they are going a little bit underowned, but again, just a low probability spot against Gray. I doubt I get to that much. If I do, it would probably be Seager, Lowe, Heim being the primary guys. Cole Calhoun at 2K flat too, if you need some value.
All right, let's talk Minnesota because this is a team I have a lot of interest in. Obviously, Jose Miranda has been godsend. Shout out Lin-Manuel Miranda. Apparently they're related. Good story for another day. Gio Urshela there batting 6th. Buxton. Kepler's been really, really bad, but I don't really care. It's still Max Kepler. I'm still going to get to a little bit here. What's your interest level in the Twins?
I'm pretty interested. Like, they're getting ownership, probably a little bit more than they deserve. Right now in the top stacks tool, we have them with 12% projected ownership, 9% chance of being the top stack. Similar numbers for me, but they do have a lot of right-handed power. I think Buxton looks like one of the better outfield options. Correa looks like one of the better shortstop options. Miranda gives you some savings. So those 3 in particular really look good.
You're done?
Yep.
I had a burp.
Oh.
That was not very helpful. It's okay. You don't pay attention to me. You shouldn't expect play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's basically what it is with you. Your stupid game. It's all right. However, we do have a mind meld. People don't know what we're talking about, but great minds think alike, my friend. That is for damn sure. Anything else from this game for you?
Nope.
I didn't think so. It just kind of felt like we covered it all. We got 3 to go. Don't forget to hit that like button. I can't have a mopey Josh Engelman. I know he's going to be mopey because Liverpool lost to Man United. Oh, no. I'm so sorry, Josh. He's going to be really upset if he's actually watching this show, and I just did that. I grew up a Man U fan, so I can't really help it. But hit that like button so that he doesn't get the glory on the day that Man United got back to prominence without Ronaldo on the pitch. It's a beautiful time to be alive. Felt really, really good. But yeah, suck it, Salah. Let's go to the next game, shall we? Here we go. Cardinals, Cubbies. Jordan Montgomery, the guy who should be starting for the Yankees today. Oh, he's starting for the Cardinals because they just needed Harrison Bader. They just needed him so badly. Facing Drew Smyly, 2 southpaws here. I'm going to get to a little bit of Jordan Montgomery. Not anything crazy, but you did say that there's a tournament pitcher that you were waiting on. I'm assuming it's got to be Jordan Montgomery. It can't be Edward Cabrera, is it?
It is not Jordan Montgomery.
Okay.
I mean, I like Jordan Montgomery, but I also think the ownership is about where it should be on him.
Okay.
He's a good pitcher. The strikeout numbers are coming up a little bit finally. He's another one we were kind of just like waiting on that all season long. Maybe it's a Cardinals thing. They were like, hey, stop trying to get ground balls from every batter, strike them out. I don't know, but he's up to 21.4%, which is nice. Not walking guys. 3.48 xFIP. He's a good pitcher. There's a lot of right-handed bats in the Cubs lineup. They do have some power, but there are also some strikeouts to be had, and the weather seems pretty favorable for pitching. Only supposed to be in the low 70s. Wind appears to be blowing in, at least somewhat. So I do like Montgomery here. I think he's a good option. I think the ownership's about where it should be. I will say that I like this entire price range a little bit more than I like paying up for the Scherzer or Urias guys, at least the way things look right now.
Okay. I think that's a good note to have for the people. Noah Syndergaard, not part of that community for me, but Sonny Gray, Cabrera, Montgomery, they're three guys that I'm getting to quite a bit. The guy who ends up getting shorted for me today is Urias, and it doesn't feel very good, but he's really the guy that's getting squeezed out of it. We'll get to him a little bit later. Do you kind of feel the same way, or are you just getting to all of them over Scherzer?
So, I mean, I haven't crunched lineups yet, but just looking at where I like how they project and then how I have them in terms of leverage, I would expect that Urias and Scherzer are just not that I don't get to either of them as much as the field, because I just think that the Gray, Cabrera, Montgomery, Syndergaard group is like correctly owned or slightly overowned, whereas the pay up options are much more overowned.
Okay. We'll see.
And then in terms of like optimal percentage, I think Springs probably is the most overowned, but also he just point per dollar projects the best by a mile. So like he's just going to get in there anyway.
Yeah, Jeffrey Springs it's hard for me at 7,700 not to see him show up in just about everything.
Right.
It's 7,700. That's drastically different than 11-3 Scherzer, 10K Urias. But I was never going to get away from Sonny Gray against Texas. I was never going to get away from Jordan Montgomery in some capacity, even though I'm not getting to him nearly as much as I was expecting coming into this slate. But such is life. There's just nobody else down there at the basement that I want to get to. But we'll continue on here. On the other side of this one, Drew Smyly. He's left-handed. You know who hits lefties really, really well? Cardinals bats.
Yeah, I think it looks like a good spot for the Cards, although you do have the same weather concerns that I mentioned for the Cubs, and I think that's why you only have about a 4.5 implied run total for St. Louis as opposed to anything higher. But Smyly is just kind of a middle-of-the-road pitcher that has his share of power issues, does have a 23.3% strikeout percentage against righties this year, but that comes with a 183 expected ISO as well. And you have an entirely right-handed lineup with the exception of Lars Nootbaar hitting ninth. First base, you have the same sort of deal that you do with the Mets. Paul Goldschmidt looks fantastic at 6,200. If you can't afford Goldschmidt, you have reincarnated Albert Pujols at 2K flat. He knows how to hit baseballs again. Somebody had asked this morning if he was a substantial pinch hit risk. He is a pinch hit risk, but he has plenty of games recently where he's gotten 4 or 5 at bats. He's just hitting so well that I don't think there's the same like impetus to get him out of the lineup as soon as they can. And one way or the other, he's 2K. Even if he does happen to get 2 or 3 at bats, it's not the end of the world. But I think that there's a high enough probability that they just leave him in that I'm not overly concerned about him. 2K I think is just a ridiculously low price tag because he is absolutely raking this season.
Yeah. Higher WRC plus than Ronald Acuna.
Yeah, it jumped from the most recent game he hit 2 home runs. I looked and it was at 126, and then now it's at 141.
Unbelievable. I will also say that Brendan Donovan, when he's in the lineup, he's always a pinch hit risk. Seems like Pujols, when they do the reverse, that he's not really at risk. It's kind of the way that it's been of late.
Yeah, and I think that just has to do with Pujols being legitimately good, apparently.
Just going through the box score, just looking at like box score, 29, 32, 25, 34. Those are 4 of his last 10 games.
Right. And looking at the at-bats, like 1 at-bat last game, but I think he came off the bench. 4 at-bats, 3 at-bats, 3 at-bats, and in that one, that was where he pinch hit for Donovan in the second inning. So he didn't even start that game, still got 3 at-bats. 2 at-bats, 4, 3, 3, or I just scrolled wrong. But the point is there's some 5s, there's a lot of 4s in there. It's not a guaranteed Pujols comes out of the game as soon as they get a chance type spot.
Yeah, I'm just going to play a ton of Paul Goldschmidt. And again, Pujols, why wouldn't he be 2K? Totally makes sense, right?
Right, yeah. Why would you bother adjusting that price?
Another different conversation for a different day. But we head to the Cubbies here. Not as great of hitting conditions as what you'd want in Wrigley Field, low 70s. We talked about that all from the St. Louis side. Major thing is Jordan Montgomery seems to be a little bit better than Drew Smyly, so that's useful. Any Cubs for you other than for me? Contreras always shows up and stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty tough, I think, on the Cubs. Contreras is just so expensive. Madrigal is a reasonable value at second base, but at the same time, you have Castro at 2,400 if you need to go down there. You have Grissom at 2,100, so it's not even like you're starving for value at second base. Franmil Reyes is 3,200, but outfield is absolutely loaded. So I think the Cubs are pretty difficult to get to against Montgomery.
Agreed. I have a lot of favorite bats from St. Louis. I've got a ton of them, but your favorite bat from St. Louis?
So in cash, I think Pujols for sure. Tournaments, probably still Pujols just because of the price tag. If you can get to Goldschmidt, I love that.
Is there even a case to be made for anybody else other than Pujols at first base in cash?
Where did so yeah, I don't really think so. This morning, some Derek Hall was showing up, but he's not in the lineup. So
yeah, like Matt Olson is 4,600 against Contreras. That would make sense, but like I still think I would end up on Pujols.
So the issue with Olson is that you can only roster 5 Braves, and basically there's like 6 or 7 Braves that are near the top of their position, and the Pujols value at first base, I think, is better than what you would get at a lot of other positions, like if you replaced the Brave. So that's kind of the case against Olson. But yeah, like if you built a cash lineup that somehow had Olson, that's obviously fine. But yeah, I think Pujols is pretty clearly the guy.
Yeah, you're playing Acuna 1, you're playing d'Arnaud 2 at catcher, you're playing Swanson 3 at shortstop, you're playing Riley 4 at third base because he's 5,100. Why would he be $5,100 ever? I don't know. And then you're playing Vaughn Grissom.
Yeah. So I had X'd out of it, but I just recrunched, or I have it recrunching right now, my top 100 projected lineups with no settings or anything. And Pujols is living in like 30% of them.
Steve Cummings, Miranda has first base. He sure does. He also has third base. So I'm going to get to lots of him throughout the board.
Who?
Jose Miranda.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Not in cash though.
No. I'm just saying he just brought it up there where he has first base. He would never be a cash play for me here.
Yeah. So first base, if I crunch my top 100, Hoskins is actually showing up the most, followed by Pujols, followed by Olson, and then a gap down to Miranda fourth. But I think in terms of where my highest projected lineups are, it would be Pujols.
Yeah, it makes sense. Rhys Hoskins, again, him and Olson, you could flip-flop, and as you said, you can only play 5 Braves, so Matt Olson just kind of falls out by the wayside. And then why wouldn't you just go to the floor, play Pujols, and then pay up for like, I don't know, freaking anybody on the top end? You're playing Acuna, Fraley, and then expensive bat like Schwarber or Buxton.
Right, so yeah, it just finished. In those 100 lineups, Hoskins is in 38, Pujols is in 25, Olson's in 23, Miranda's in 12. Everybody else is in 10, is in less than 10. But the top 3 projected all have Pujols. Fourth is Hoskins, but basically the difference is you're turning Pujols into Hoskins, you're turning Swanson / Correa, whichever you preferred, into Trey Turner, which is fine, but also unnecessary. And then you're turning Byron Buxton into JJ Bleday, which he's good, but I just pretty clearly prefer the Byron Buxton side of that.
If you type Yandy Diaz as a cash play into chat one more time, I might send you to the Shadow Realm. I might just straight out Doctor Strange you into a weird, mystifying place. Stop it. Why do you say shh and then repeat it over and over again? Because you want attention. I get it. It's okay. This is our show.
Somebody said you're not big on Vogelbach anymore. I love Vogelbach in tournaments. I was never remotely close to saying he should be a cash game play.
We were talking cash to try to help people out. We try to do different things to mix it up here once in a while on these shows, keep it fresh, keep it new, just like a new age couple, 20 years of marriage. Even though Adam's done like 2 years of shows with me, shouldn't be bored of me yet, but he is. It's okay. I'm interesting. I'm still... Whatever.
It's not your fault that I have the attention span of a 3-year-old.
It's very true. I will say, though, in person, actually, you gave me all the attention. You know who didn't?
Jordan.
NFL preseason is underway, fam. We have showdown stuff for tonight. Obviously, we have projections going every single day because Matt Kajeski is a monster who lives in a log cabin and eats through the wilderness and just literally sits on a laptop. We give him nice nourishment in cans of tuna and many fine Four Locos for him to enjoy on the daily so that he can put in hours and hours and hours and hours of preseason work for you. And right now with promo code Herbert, yes, new promo code starting today, we have over 70% off the projections for the NFL preseason, $7 for that NFL weekly pass. I would take advantage of that. That's Herbert, as in Justin Herbert, as in the guy who's going to win an NFL MVP this season. So definitely use that promo code. Enjoy. Excited for NFL showdown stuff, for literally everything that's coming up here the entire week, because it looks like we have Monday night preseason, we have Tuesday night preseason, we have Wednesday night preseason. I would take advantage of this for just $7 and just have those projections go to work for you. Cool. 2 games to go here, my friends. And now we got to be talking about your tournament pitcher. I'm assuming it's coming out of this one. If it's Eric Lauer, I quit. But we've got Edward Cabrera, Adam Oller, and Adam Oller sucks. So talk to me about Edward Cabrera, who I'm assuming to be your tournament pitcher of the day.
So it's obviously Adam Oller. No, but I actually do think Oller's playable, but
stop it.
Not that I really get there. Cabrera is the one though that I think it's not by like a wide margin, but I think he's going a little bit under-owned compared to even that Gray, Montgomery, Syndergaard group. He's made 6 starts in the majors this year. He's a highly regarded prospect. He has really good stuff. He has a 28.8% strikeout percentage and 3.75 xFIP through those first 6 starts. 12.8% walk percentage isn't ideal, but you're facing the A's in Oakland. Reasonable price tag at $8,800, and right now we have him projected for 14% ownership, while Syndergaard's 19, Montgomery's 15, Gray's 21. I understand he's the most expensive of that group, but I don't think it's going to matter all that much. Good strikeout numbers at AAA this year as well. 6 starts there, 28 2/3 innings, 33.6% strikeout percentage. Zips projects him for a 25.8% strikeout percentage going forward. The bat projects him for 25.9%, which is notable because anybody with a prospect status is hated by
by Derek Carty.
Yeah, so it's notable that they actually like Cabrera. Yeah. But yeah, like I don't know, he's good. Like there's no doubt in my mind he's a more talented pitcher than Noah Syndergaard. There's no doubt in my mind he's a better strikeout pitcher than Jordan Montgomery. Sonny Gray is obviously a better pitcher and has good strikeout stuff, but also the Texas matchup is more dangerous than the Oakland matchup, and Gray's getting more ownership. So it's just kind of the way I put it this morning. Like I like all of those pitchers. And as I said before, I think it's very likely that I kind of live in that range, them plus Jeffrey Springs. But the way I put it this morning was like, if you're just talking, well, particularly Cabrera, Montgomery, Syndergaard, you can throw Sonny Gray in there too, but mostly those other 3. While I like all of them, if one of them, like after 5 innings, you're just like, shit, like I need this guy because he has 10 strikeouts already, it's skewed pretty heavily towards being Cabrera rather than Montgomery or Syndergaard, I think.
This changeup is so ridiculous. I'm just watching it right now. Edward Cabrera's changeup.
Yeah.
Have you seen the overlay of this thing?
Yeah, and it's 93 miles an hour.
Oh my God, is this pitch just absurd? 159 expected batting, 162 expected batting average, 159 actual batting average, negative 10-degree average launch angle when he throws the changeup and balls put in play.
Yeah. Going back to last year with it, 1.3-degree launch angle from righties, lefties, negative 6.8. 11% swinging strike percentage on it to lefties, 20.1% to righties. So far this year, 20% swinging strike percentage to righties on that changeup, 13.7 to lefties, negative 15.9-degree launch angle to lefties, 0.4 to righties.
I mean, honestly, baseball, it's beautiful when you talk numbers. Like baseball, and you see somebody like this that's like a young 24-year-old dude who's just got like he has that one pitch. I always love these unicorns. Like there's guys that you and I have talked about in the past. Junis has a little bit of that, but he's been terrible. Trying to think of like just the key on guys where it's just like that one pitch. Who was the Oriole that we always rostered? Gaussman. Oh my God.
Well, so that's actually what I was going to say here is, as an Orioles fan that remembers Gaussman very distinctly, I love the fact that the most thrown pitch to right-handed hitters this year from Cabrera has been his changeup. Because a lot of times you'll see, and it's not by a huge margin, like he's thrown 91 sliders and
it's pretty big, 36% to 23% for a fastball.
Yeah, but that's huge because like the common thinking is that you throw your changeup to opposite-handed hitters,
right?
And teams, coaches, players are like a lot of times really hesitant to realize like, okay, but this guy's changeup is not everybody else's changeup. And like you saw that with Gossman, it was just like, yeah, technically it's a splitter, changeup, whatever you want to call it. Most guys wouldn't throw it to same-handed hitters, but yours is better than everybody's, and you should throw it to everybody, and he just wouldn't, or the Orioles didn't want him to, or whatever. So it's really, really good to see that early on Cabrera is comfortable throwing that pitch to same-handed hitters.
Now he's wearing a double magnum condom on his left hand, so that's cool.
What?
Because he's not to tip pitches. He's got that massive glove.
Oh, Gossman.
Yeah, for the Blue Jays now.
Yeah.
I have big hands. Sorry, I'm just doing the.
I thought you meant Cabrera.
No, saying Gaussman. Just whatever. Cabrera's awesome. This is fun. I'm with you. I'm going to get to a little bit more now too. Glad to go on a deep dive with you here because that's what this is. This is the deeper dive. I'm not getting to a whole lot of bats here in this spot in this entire game. Are you getting to anything substantially?
Probably not. So I did sort of, like I jokingly mentioned Aller, but at 3% ownership against the Marlins, I do think he actually projects reasonably well at 6,300. Like I have him projected similarly to Jake Odorizzi and Drew Smyly, who are both more expensive. Miami's not a very good offense either. So if you get to some Aller, I think it's okay. But the reason that I kind of doubt that I get to too much is that, again, I think I'm just going to be living in that mid-range pitching range most frequently. So like, I'm not going to run into the issue where I have Scherzer, I'm trying to get to like the Braves or the Mets, and I need to go all the way down to Aller. It's more likely that I can just go with like, Montgomery and Cabrera or something. But I do think Aller is playable just because Miami's not particularly good either. Certainly shouldn't be confident in him, but worth mentioning. As far as bats go from Miami, John Birdie gives you stolen base upside, although he hasn't been stealing bases as frequently. But the one guy that really stands out is JJ Bleday at 2K flat. He is a good hitter, has power, batting cleanup. Just again, no business being $2,000.
Like a good bidet. Bleday is refreshing. That's a good thing. Favorite bat from Oakland?
Seth Brown.
Cool. Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, Langeliers
is 2K flat, so I guess you could also say him. Yeah, one of those two.
Overall, 1 OPS at the moment. That's fascinating. Hey, Shay. Good job. 1 game to go. Hit that like button. We got 3-4 minutes here. We're going to get ourselves turned on over to Josh Engelman, Greg Ehrenberg on the Live Before Lock show. We did see Douglas Geely. He did say that he could hear Eric do Eric things all day long. Could you listen to me talk for longer than an hour?
I have.
I know, but I'm saying like doing a show with me for 75 minutes. Would you feel inadequate from such a thing?
No, I would feel great because I'm better at it than you.
Oh, shots fired into the moon as we go to Brewers and Dodgers. Lauer versus Urias, 2 southpaws on the mound in this one too. Eric Lauer had nearly a 30% K rate out of the gate this season. That has regressed to around 24% now. Can't really imagine that I get to any Eric Lauer here against the Dodgers because I don't know. They seem pretty good at baseball, but Urias needs to have a conversation. He needs to be discussed. He's 10K, which is one of the more expensive tags we've seen for him in a long time. But how do you feel about him in the context of the slate as the highest owned pitcher on the slate?
Yeah, that's where I start to sort of have an issue. Like, I think he's a good play. He's a good pitcher. He's typically giving you 6 or 7 innings, assuming he doesn't get blown up. 24.4% strikeout percentage, 3.66 xFIP. He hasn't given up power to righties this year, only a 108 expected ISO, 262 expected WOBA. He's good. It's just, I kind of think I can get the same thing for $2,000 less and less ownership. From Springs, I think I can get the same thing at a little bit more ownership, but then, you get functionally the same thing. Like, I have Urias at 18.4 DraftKings points. I have Gray at 16.8, Cabrera at 15.8, Montgomery at like 15, Syndergaard at like 16. When you factor in the salary and then also that it's lower ownership, I just, if you're building lineups that are contrarian enough for you and have Urias, it's fine. I don't think I get to that much because I do think he's going a bit over-owned here. You're muted.
I know. I was doing so good. I feel pretty confident that I'm going to get to still some Brewers on the other side against Urias. I haven't finished everything out here yet, but whether it's McCutchen, Renfroe against any lefty that on any day, I can get to a little bit there. Adames is 5,100, maybe not as much there, but are you going to get to any Brewers bats going up against a popular pitcher?
I think they're kind of like the Yankees for me.
Yeah.
they're going under-owned just because they're getting like 1% ownership, but I also kind of doubt that I get to too much. Like Urias just isn't a guy that I really want to target all that much. If I did, McCutchen at 4K looks pretty good. You can save a little bit of money going to like Brosseau or Keston Hiura. Obviously, Hiura is going to strike out like at least 3 times. Maybe he'll hit a home run the 4th time up, but it's a pretty tough lineup for me to want to get to.
That makes me want to unlike the video. What made you unlike the video? Don't unlike the video. Like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do all those nice things for us as we turn over to the Dodgers, who on any day ending in Y, you could probably get to them. They have some negative leverage going their direction in the top stacks tool here, but they're not Atlanta. They're not Tampa Bay. I mean, Minnesota, I prefer a little bit, but how do you feel about the Dodgers in this spot?
I think they look good. Like you said, they are getting a little bit of negative leverage, but also getting less total ownership than Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Minnesota. I think that they're in the same ballpark in terms of top stack percentage. So the fact that they are getting a little bit less ownership is nice. Lauer's not a bad pitcher. He has about a 23.5% strikeout percentage this year, but he has allowed 1.7 home runs per 9, 4.2 xFIP, 173 expected ISO, or 172 expected ISO to righties this year. And you just have so much power in the Dodgers lineup. So yeah, I mean, I think they look good. They're a little bit more expensive, the guys that I would want, than most of the other teams that I like. And that's probably the big reason why they're not getting a little bit more ownership. But again, I think that I like the mid-range pitching enough. That's not really going to be an issue for me.
How many times do you think Hanser Alberto has had over 14 fantasy points on DraftKings this season?
3.
Once.
I'm pretty sure it was a game where I greatly needed him to not do anything.
Let me find it. I had it just written in my notes section. It was on May 30th against Zach Thompson in Pittsburgh.
Maybe not. I thought, I mean, it's possible. I couldn't tell you when it was. I just remember there was a game where I was either sweating a tournament or
Kyle Freeland. He had 14 against Kyle Freeland in Coors Field. That's
probably what it was. There was a game where I was either sweating a qualifier or a tournament or something, and it was just like, all right, need Alberto not to do anything, and he just had one of his best games.
Somebody just said, morons, get them to 300 likes. We don't have to get to 300. If we could get over 225 by the time Adam and I hit eject here on the show, which is right now, that would be greatly appreciated. But thank you so much. Just to recap for the people, your 3 favorite tournament pitchers, your 3 favorite stacks.
So quickly to answer a question in chat, because I don't think anybody answered it. Comment God said, oh, never mind. EMAC answered it. Never mind. What did you say? 3 favorite pitchers and 3 favorite stacks?
That would be it.
Atlanta, the Mets, and the Dodgers, and then 3 favorite pitchers: Springs, Gray, Cabrera, probably.
Yeah, Mets probably 1 for him. Well, Mets and Atlanta kind of 1-2. So you definitely had those right. Minnesota Dodgers 3-4 in whichever capacity. I probably will get to a lot of them. And then pitchers pretty much exactly the same here as you. Hope Urias doesn't go completely nuts because that would be bad for me. But that does it for us here on the Deeper Dive. Hit that like button, as I've said multiple times throughout the show. Thank you to Jordan Klein for not putting up anything terrible in meme form when I reference anything, because he loves to do that. He loves to troll me. Nobody loves to troll me more than Jordan Klein, that's for sure. But Adam, you might be up there close at this point in time. Any final words for the people?
Nope.
Okay, then. I guess we just leave. Seriously? I knew you were going to do it. Just, we're leaving. Goodbye. Josh and Greg next. Have fun. Idiots. What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stokastic here on the Oddshopper channel, coming to you with another edition of Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. It's time. It's another week of baseball. It's going to be for Monday, August 22nd. I should say the month first. That's how things happen here. You know what else happens here? A lot of great things. We have some great picks. We have so many great analysts. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe button, and notification bell so you get to be apprised of when anything goes live here at the channel. And of course, head over to BetMGM in the video description box below. There's a link. You click on it. You use promo code Lindy, Lindy. Look at that, I can spell. And you can get up to a $1,000 risk-free bet just by signing up and playing a first bet for new users. It doesn't get a whole lot easier than that. So whether you want to put in $5, $10, $20, $100, up to $1,000, that will be a risk-free bet for you. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we've got 9 games to get to here for August 22nd. It's a Monday. Let's get the week started off right and get to some picks. We kick off Monday's 9-game slate with an interesting spot. It's Michael Kopech of the White Sox taking on Daniel Lynch of the Royals in KC. And Kopech, has put together back-to-back quality starts for the first time since May. He blanked the Tigers, then narrowly lost a decision 3-2 to the Astros last time out. His strikeouts were down in that outing, but that'll happen versus the Astros for just about anybody unless your name is Spencer Strider, so I'm not concerned. And knowing this Royals squad is not concerned with winning baseball games and has an atrocious back half of their lineup, I like Kopech's chances to succeed in this spot so long as he doesn't get too walk crazy. He did have 5 of those in his past 2 starts, so something to be paying attention to. North of a 10% walk rate, not ideal. As for Lynch on the other side, though, the lefty's hard hit profile, 45.9% hard hit rate, a 421 expected slugging, north of a 90.5 mile per hour average exit velocity, those aren't pretty numbers to be looking at. And if you haven't heard me talk in a while about teams with extreme splits versus handedness as pitchers, so like the Cardinals against lefty and righty, specifically lefties, you want to target them, the Phillies, the Tigers, all of those kind of come to mind for me. The White Sox might actually be at the top of that list. So versus righties this season, the team from the south side of Chicago has only been able to muster a 96 WRC plus and a 120 ISO against righties. But versus southpaws like Lynch, a 119 WRC plus and a 148 ISO. Those are drastically better numbers. Those sorts of marks have me thinking about a big start to the card here. -1.5 White Sox lock button season in full effect.
And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. It is Monday, August 22nd, aka the 64th birthday for my old man. And I don't mean Terry McBride, but feel free to wish Terry a happy birthday as well if you need to. I'm Josh Engelman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We are brought to you by oddshopper. 8 games on the slate, and we are going to talk about them in a different way than the Deeper Dive crew all the way up until 7:05. So hit that like button now if you'd like to. Get it up over 250. The boys before us did a decent job, so I can't complain too much. Greg, how are you? How was your weekend? How was everything? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, it was good. Happy birthday to your dad. Not that we know each other, but I feel like it's the polite thing to say.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a good weekend. Had a friend from high school came and visited. We watched the fights on Saturday, which were tremendous. I mean, in terms of from a DFS standpoint, we got to the final fight of the night, and I had like 78% Usman and almost none of Leon Edwards. So by the time we get to the 5th round, and I'm almost like going into the fight, I'm about break even for the card, and I have all that Usman, like none Edwards. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do well for this slate. And then it was just a change of so many thousands of dollars on one head kick that goes right like that. But that's what's very much enjoyable about MMA and the UFC card. So so overall, it was a good weekend. And last night, I watched the House of Dragons like that. So riding good coming into today.
Probably should have put like $100 on Edwards entering that 5th round as a bit of a hedge.
No, because the odds were terrible.
I know somebody mentioned it earlier that Usman was like -3,000 or something like that.
It here's how you know a bet is bad. The Usman side was minus 5,000, which was probably reasonable at that point. What would you guess the comeback is on Edwards with Usman being minus 5,000?
They were probably real egregious, like 1,500 or something stupid.
13-1. So
Okay.
yeah, as about as bad as it could possibly get. So yeah, there was no reason to ever hedge on that kind of number.
No, not at all. I didn't see any of it. Still haven't even seen the fight yet. I'm gonna try to carve out some time tomorrow to watch it. I was in the woods with no service whatsoever. I woke up Sunday morning, came down the hill, and drove like 10 minutes, and then my phone got service. Got the DK pop up that Edwards knocked him out in the final minute. I was like, oh, cool. At least it wasn't like potentially the most legendary finish in UFC history that I missed.
No, it was pretty wild, especially because it was just that type of thing where the fight was so one-sided towards the end. Edwards clearly won the first round though, but after that, it was just such one-way traffic that it was like ceremonial, just finishing the last minute of the fight, and all of a sudden it's over. It's like, where the hell did that come from? But there's also a pretty good point here that was brought up by Ship Happens in the YouTube chat, where if you rewatch any of the fights, so it took place at altitude. It didn't really impact the main event that much that it took place at altitude. The other fights were almost all shit shows. Like everybody was gassed 2 minutes into fights, and it was just what the hell is going on, and everything became a coin flip.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love that. And we'll get started on baseball in a second. I love how clear it is who really is like the tip of the spear in the UFC, where even at altitude, Kamaru Usman's not coming in there with like a substandard gas tank. You know, like it's just not happening like that. You know, he has put in that work elsewhere, where like you're not ever surprised to see it at the end. That should just be such a wake-up call. I mean, it was always crazy to me that like they always blame that Kane lost on altitude in Mexico City. It's like, he was supposed to be the guy that had the best cardio in the entire division. We're gonna just like give him a free pass for that now? I hated it.
So, by the way, also, because I listen to Big John McCarthy's podcast from time to time, and it's a real thing, though. Like, he said that there was another fighter on that card that got altitude sickness, talking about the Kane card, and ended up shitting their pants backstage, and became a whole big deal. He didn't say who the fighter was, but I think there are certain aspects of altitude that the fighters just can't control. Leon Edwards said that he didn't feel like he had a cardio issue, but he said after he got past the first round, like, he wanted to do stuff, and his body just wouldn't respond to his thoughts. So I do think there's certain elements of it, whether it's the lack of oxygen or whatever it might be, that there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, I agree. That you prepare for it. You know where your card's going to be. Like, it's not like they get just tossed onto a plane and wake up in altitude. Like, go somewhere else earlier. Yeah. Particularly if you're in a main event fight, you've got the money to do that.
So I hear that point. I also still think there's just stuff they can't, like, that's what Kane did for his fight. He was training and stayed at altitude. Didn't really matter. Same with Leon Edwards. And he still said that past the first
I think it was
round.
The opposite. I think Kane, like, specifically didn't go to it.
I think he went 3 weeks in advance, and there was a case to be made that maybe he could have gone earlier, but
I don't remember now.
Yeah, he still did go.
Anyway, you want to talk baseball?
Yeah, we could. And also, shout out to Mike Lawrence. Said the next time that he shits his pants, he's blaming it on the altitude.
Does that work if you live at sea level? Because I live at like 1 foot of altitude.
It depends what floor of your house you're on. If you're upstairs, you're like, oh, it's the altitude and just altitude sickness. Why not?
I mean, yeah, I am basically in the water right now. So other than being in my home, so I'm not going to be able to get that one. What I am going to be able to get is some of the most expensive pitcher on today's slate. That would be Max Scherzer, 11,300. We're finally getting someone priced the way that they basically should be for a day. How do you feel about Scherzer today with like the correct price in a spot that's not exactly easy?
Yeah, so here's the part that's really tricky about it. Not only the matchup, the price point, I agree with you, it's fine, but the weather's also bad. So I don't live that far from New York. It has been pouring basically the entire day. It stopped like 30 minutes ago. The weather's been terrible here, but it's still really cloudy, and there's a chance of rain later. If you have the money to spend up for Scherzer and just there's no other issues on this slate, it's a no-brainer. I just have to keep my eye on the weather for the rest of the night because I'm really uncertain about it because it's been fairly miserable here.
So let's just say that you're going to get to a point where you don't want Scherzer. How is that impacting everything for you then? We're talking about a guy that is, I assume, the top pitcher on the slate from a top pitcher's perspective. Clearly not going to be the best value option, but that's basically irrelevant in this case. Where does that ownership end up going for you?
Boy, that becomes tricky because I already have a lot of Jeffrey Springs. I think he makes a whole bunch of sense as an SP2 on DraftKings. I think Julio Urias, because we were talking, just before about, hey, DraftKings, they finally got some pitcher pricing correct, and same goes over for FanDuel. Scherzer's 11.5, Julio Urias is 10.4. Springs is too cheap on both sites, 8,000 on FanDuel, 77 on DK. He's my most exposed pitcher everywhere today. I think that he makes a whole bunch of sense.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to Julio Urias, I think there's some safety to him because the Brewers not a great offense against left-hand pitching. They also strike out a bunch against lefties. But Urias typically doesn't pitch deep into games. And we've also gotten to a point in the season with the Dodgers pitching staff where I don't think there's much need for them to stretch these pitchers out to throw well over 100 pitches, which Urias hasn't done the entire season. He hasn't thrown over 100 pitches. So I think we're probably getting 5-6 innings out of Urias because the Dodgers are up like 16 games in the NL West. Clayton Kershaw is already hurt. You don't want to risk anybody else getting injured. So I really hope the weather's okay in New York because I don't feel that good about other pitchers. Like Sonny Gray is somebody I would be cool with getting to, but I think Urias, I think his price point's a little prohibitive for me, and he's way too popular.
How long are you going to wait before you pull the trigger?
So I am going to build 2 sets of lineups, one with Scherzer with the Yankees Mets game in it and one without it. And then I'd say probably 10 minutes or so before the slate starts, I'll just upload whatever CSV I feel comfortable with, depending on the weather situation.
All righty, that works for me. You touched on Jeffrey Springs. I think he's basically the best combination of price and upside today. The ownership is there, but I think that it's completely warranted. I don't have much else to add here other than the fact that I completely understand why he's getting the ownership that he is, and it certainly doesn't hurt to face an Angels team that strikes out a lot.
Yeah, the thing that's really confusing to me about this slate and the pitcher ownership is it's like, why is Julio Urias the same ownership as Jeffrey Springs and Max Scherzer? Like, because we've got Urias was the most popular right before our latest ownership update, but still we've got Urias on DK 36% owned, Springs 37%, Scherzer 34%. I think there's a pretty big gap between Scherzer to Urias just on the high end pitchers, and then I like the value on Springs so much better than Urias. In our projections, we have Urias projected better. I mean, we have Springs projected better than Urias when he's $2,300 less expensive. So I'd much rather play Jeffrey Springs. And then same goes over for on FanDuel, where Urias is $10,400. It's a pretty expensive price tag, and he's still really popular. He's the one that doesn't really make sense to me on the high end, why he's picking up as much ownership as he is.
So I understand it. I have Urias 2.7 points ahead of Springs. I also still have Springs as my most exposed pitcher. So that gap still isn't hurting anything, but it is still getting me to Urias the same way that the public is. I'm basically mirroring the public outside of being a little bit lighter on Sonny Gray. And instead of everybody getting a little trickle of ownership, I've got a bit more Contreras and a bit more Odorizzi than the basically no ownership that those guys are getting. But otherwise, I think pitching is pretty cut and dry. Like, do you see anybody today where you look at the ownership and you're surprised by it, either positively or negatively?
Other than Urias, not really. Maybe Sonny Gray in the latest ownership projection, now that he's come down to 20% on DraftKings and he's only sitting at 6% on FanDuel. Considering some of the weather concerns that we have in the New York game, I think there's a pretty good case to be made that I just want to get to a little bit more Sonny Gray and just try to fade a little bit of potential bad weather in the New York game. But Sonny Gray, when earlier in the day, he was like 25, 26% owned. To me, I was like, oh, that seems about reasonable. Now that he's come down, I do like getting to Sonny Gray at home against the Texas Rangers. Pretty favorable matchup. Sonny Gray's had a really up and down season. And I think he's had cases where he's just been injured. He's been healthy. I think he had an issue with tipping pitches at one point in the year. And now he's back to having everything figured out, and he's been healthy for an extended period of time, which I just think helps him overall. Is more stretched out. He's also able to just have more consistency with his pitches when he's making starts regularly. But in the month of August, or actually, I'll just look second half of the season. So since the All-Star break, Sonny Gray has a 1.69 ERA. The underlying numbers here for him, it is a 2.93 FIP, 2.95 xFIP. His strikeout rate is up to 30.2% in the second half of the season. So I do think it really helps him just getting that consistency, not being hurt and staying on the field, which has always been an issue for him.
Does Eric Lauer become viable if Max Scherzer is removed from this slate at like a reasonable time?
The thing that's tough with Lauer is I think he might have burnt himself out a little bit early in the year. So his fastball velocity was way up this year from last year. And if you remember how he started the season, like he was one of the best pitchers in the National League to open up the year. And it's trailed off in a pretty big way in the second half. And I think a lot of it was just his fastball velocity. He was from like 94, 95 in the first month and a half or so of the season. And now he's back down to being like 92, 93. So I think he might have just stretched himself out a little bit too much to the point where we got into the later portions of the season. Now he's just a little bit fatigued. The velocity has come down. So the numbers for him since the first month of the year where he was ridiculously good, he had a 36.6% K rate in the first couple months of the season, a 2.52 FIP, and then the subsequent months since then, 4.84 FIP, 6.59, 4.37, 5.32 in August. So I'm concerned about, well, number one, we're always concerned when a pitcher's going up against the Dodgers, but I also think there's legitimate concerns about just how tired is Eric Lauer when his velocity is dipped and his results are so much worse.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that if we remove Scherzer from this slate that he's just suddenly going to show up in anything more than like 3-4% of lineups. Obviously, like you're just going to get to him a little bit more by default, but a little bit more than 1% might just be 5%, and that's still not all that interesting. Do you have like a sleeper for today? Anybody weird that you're getting to that the public's not getting to? Like that's Odorizzi for me today. I have a lot in comparison to the 5% we're projecting or whatever the number was before. I've got around 19 right now. I don't mind that at all. I'm not all that worried about the Pirates. I'm not worried about the run total. I think he looks a little bit better than it's being shown. Do you have anybody like that?
I would say Edward Cabrera, just because it makes sense to me. Because number one, I think he's good. He's a 1.78 ERA, a 2.96 expected ERA this year, a 28.8% K rate. So all the numbers across the board for him are fantastic. And then he's pitching against the Oakland A's. So all of that makes sense to me. And people aren't playing him. So with that, relative to the slate, not that he's like 1% owned, but he's 13% over on DK, on FanDuel. He's only 3% owned. So with that in mind, I think Edward Cabrera is a legitimate prospect with actual upside. His average fastball velocity this year is 96.4 miles per hour. So he's got real stuff. He's pitching really well. The Marlins have done a really good job at developing pitchers this season. So he's somebody I think the field is a little bit too light on.
I'm surprised I'm not getting more. I don't really know what it is. The fact that I guess I have a little bit more respect for this A's lineup than I do in my brain. 106 aggregate WRC plus is what I get via Steamer. And they had been sitting in that like 97, 98 range over these past couple of weeks, but not the weakest lineup in the world. This is probably about as strong of a lineup as Oakland can actually run out there right now. And I think that's what's stopping me. Like not the best strikeout matchup. Kemp and Bride in the 1-2 hole project for 14 and 18% K rates in Steamer. That's just going to be a lot of plate appearances to guys that aren't as likely to strike out. So while Cabrera certainly has the stuff, I think he's getting offset a little bit more than I was ever really expecting. So I'm dead neutral. We had, at least in the last run of ownership that I had, it was 14% to Cabrera, and that was exactly what I had.
Yeah.
But he's definitely the guy that I think could just blow that out of the water.
He's also a guy who I wouldn't be surprised the slate starts. And it's like, oh, look, he's actually 25% owned and not this really low ownership, particularly if people get off Scherzer. Because I'm just kind of thinking through the slate. And the question you had asked before was, what happens if the weather becomes sketchier in the Mets-Yankees game? Where do people start to go with their ownership? And I'm starting to think the answer is going to be Edward Cabrera, as I'm just looking through the ownership. He's the guy that has the most to go up in terms of current lineup season.
Let's hit this super chat from George before we talk a little bit about the free content, which will take about 1 second. Before we do that, hit that like button. We're up to 250. Fantastic job, you guys. 275 is next. So we need 21 more. We're at 254. Hit that thumbs up. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Appreciate getting them. You're the best, man. Thoughts on the Rays as a main stack on DK for multiple lineups?
All right. Well, it would have helped if my browser didn't crash as I was about to answer. But let me see. I'm just going to pull Fantasy Cruncher back up and see where I'm currently landing with the Rays as a stack. So
they were one of my biggest fades prior to this. So I am not going to be bringing a lot of happy information to anyone that wants to roster the Rays.
All right. So my current ownership on Tampa Bay. But I'm not really getting to them at all, actually. Let's see. What is our top? Why is that the case?
You're about to find out pretty quickly. Top stack on the last run that I pulled was 5%. Ownership was 11.
Okay. Yeah. So that's why. So this is a team that they're the second most popular ownership on this slate. I like the matchup against Tucker Davidson. I don't think Tucker Davidson is good at all, but there's a lot of not so great pitchers today going up against really good offenses. And I just don't think the Rays' current offense is good. Like, they are missing a lot of their top hitters. This team has been destroyed by injuries this season. And, you know, the question ultimately becomes, all right, Tampa Bay, are they in a good matchup against Tucker Davidson? Sure. But we've also got teams like the Phillies going up against Luis Sesso, the Cardinals against Drew Smyly, the Mets against Domingo Germán. So these are all teams that I think are, you know, probably like Tucker Davidson, I think is comparable to pitchers like Luis Sesso or Domingo Germán at this point. But he's going up against other offenses that are better and that are picking up less ownership. So it's hard for me to back Tampa Bay just based on that ownership number. They're really not popping up for me.
No, I actually have them slightly higher in top stack, but less than a full percentage point, and I'm still miles away from getting to them in any sort of volume. The Dodgers are the team that I'm getting in basically everything right now, and they are pulling less ownership at this moment. I don't see a really good reason that I would want to be going to Tampa, other than, you know, they are relatively cheap through that middle section. If you leave like a Rosarena out of that stack, which, you know, you shouldn't want to do that. He's their best hitter, second best hitter, however you want to call it for today. Most owned hitter, at least for sure. Even if you wanted to do that and you're coming in super cheap and that allows you to do Scherzer and Urias, like, you got to make sure you're hitting 3 one-offs probably that are also relatively low owned. You don't have to go crazy. It doesn't have to be 3 1%ers or anything, but you got to be very conscious about the chalk and the rest of your lineup. Maybe that's a spot where you're paying down somewhere else, but like, you don't really need that salary. All of the actual pitchers at the top are pulling that ownership now. The park is not great for runs. It's not great for power. I don't love it.
Yeah, no, same. And once again, the biggest factor in this, or the two biggest factors, they're popular. And I really don't think the Rays offense is particularly good in its current form.
I'm with you. Guys, MLB projections, free today. Free. Go to stokastic.com, go to our projections, and then you just have them. That's all you got to do. It's really simple to be able to access them. I assume there will be a link in chat at some point in time. If there wasn't already, you can click that as well. But you could also just type in stokastic.com. Schedule for the rest of the day is simple. There is not another show after this. Watch all of our pre-recorded content on every single one of our channels. I don't even know how many we have anymore. I think it's 3. If you told me it was 4, I would also believe that. But either way, subscribe to all of them and watch everything that we do.
Yeah, 4 would have been the correct guess, by the way.
Is it really? So this one, obviously, oddshopper, best ball. This is our fantasy football one too.
Yeah, there you go. Now you got it.
Yeah. I couldn't remember if best ball and fantasy football were the same one.
Yeah, they were at one point. Now they're 2 separate things.
Got it.
By the way, a quick update on the New York weather situation. So, overcast outside my house. Another thing, also looking at the weather report, is it looks like there's a window where it's cool at the start of the game, like there's an opening, and then there's like a 50% chance, the worst percentage chance of rain, 50% chance of rain right in the middle of the game. Here's the positive though. Max Scherzer was pitching in a game, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where there was a rain delay in the middle. He just came out, like the game was stopped for like an hour and 15 minutes. He just came back and pitched like regular afterwards. So just based on what the current weather report looks like, I do think there's a chance for a rain delay, but it's not long enough to where I think Scherzer wouldn't come back out if it's an issue.
Alrighty. Right now, I'm moving ahead with Scherzer in, with those teams in. If it helps anybody to know this, I am generally wrong. I don't get this shit right ever.
And he means about everything.
Yes, I do mean about everything. But in particular, trying to take stands on the weather, I rarely get this decision right. And I'm not entirely sure that I've ever gotten it right to my benefit. So, like, clearly there are times where the game then does play, and I feel great about getting a mild ownership discount. It certainly never works out positively where, like, that guy is also really good.
And then there's one other game it hasn't mattered for the pitchers. So the Philadelphia game, it's the same exact situation. There's a chance of rain during the game, but I don't give a shit about the pitchers in that game. So to me, I only care about the offenses primarily. So like there's nothing that's really going to change because I don't think the game is going to get postponed. It could potentially get delayed, but that matters more for pitchers than offenses.
Okay. Would you like to talk about offenses now, since that was a pretty good segue?
I believe we can.
Well, then let's do that. What team on this slate do you like the most?
So for me, and this shouldn't come as a surprise by any means to anybody who's watched my shows when we've talked about this guy being on a slate. The Mets going up against Domingo Germán, who Germán's numbers this year have not been good. It's been a downward trend for him basically since entering the big leagues. He was a pitcher that was a really highly regarded prospect, was also a pitcher who was considered to be a really high upside guy, had really good stuff. And his fastball velocity has dipped every single season since he's been in the big leagues. His strikeout rate has also gone down every single season since he's been in the big leagues. His results this year, a 4.45 ERA, a 4.86 expected ERA. He's not generating strikeouts, and his ground ball rate is way down. So the last year we saw him pitch, he had a 42.2% ground ball rate. This year, that's down to 33.3, the lowest of his career. So that's always good for the upside of opposing offenses when more balls are getting hit in the air. The Mets have a really good offense, and the field is currently not getting there at all. So I don't know if that's because people are scared off because of the weather or there's just some name value with Domingo Germán. But every slate that Germán's pitched, I've stacked against him pretty heavily, and the opposing offenses have never been popular against him.
Let's see how much I have right now. The answer is probably not a lot because I have too much of the Dodgers, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I do not, a little bit more of the Mets than I thought. I have them in 5-mans. They're not really coming up as much filler for me. So I do have 7% 5-man stacks to the Mets.
Okay. They're currently my most rostered offense. I really like getting to the Mets today if this ownership holds, because we have them right now at 2.8% as a team.
Yeah.
So for reference, the only teams with less ownership than the Mets right now are the Cubs, because they're the Cubs. And also the Cubs are really expensive today, so that makes it prohibitive to get to them. The Brewers going up against Julio Urias, the Yankees against Max Scherzer, the Angels against Jeffrey Springs, and the A's against Edward Cabrera. Like, one of these spots are not like the other. And just the Mets are so much better than the unknown teams today.
Yeah, I have, let's see, what was the mark? 6.2% in the aggregate. So about double the field, a little over double the field. Go Mets for sure, but go Dodgers for sure for me. I don't know what it is. I've run this crunch this morning. I ran this crunch before this show started. I've run the crunch since this show started. I have the Dodgers jammed today. Aggressively jammed in a way that I don't even know how it's happening. I assume I just have so much salary left over that it's just basically forcing the Dodgers in a weird way. Not that I set any sort of limits or anything. It's just they look incredible for everything that I have. If the Dodgers go well, I will have money today.
Yeah, and the Dodgers are a team. Where are they at? They're picking up some ownership today. I'm also getting to the Dodgers. But one thing is, if you look at like the Mets compared to the Dodgers, we have the Dodgers with better top stack odds in our top stack stool, and the Mets have a fourth of the ownership. It's just crazy how nobody is playing the Mets in a spot against Domingo Germán. I just really don't think that he's a great real life pitcher at this point. And I think the Mets are one of the best offenses in baseball.
Yeah, if you think that I'm the jinx in this situation, fire up your Eric Lauer, I guess, because I have the Dodgers in half of my shit at this point. Well, 35% in the aggregate.
I mean, whenever you're on the Dodgers, it's never necessarily a bad situation, especially if they're not crazy popular. Like, I think they're a totally reasonable team to get to.
I love the driving force, and I can actually speak to this a little bit. Obviously, they've got a relatively high implied run total for the slate. We've got Eric Lauer on the opposite side. Righty power plays up so massively in LA. They've got a bunch of it across the board. They're actually putting in more lefties into this lineup than I would have really expected to start the game, which is kind of appealing to me because I feel like they're less likely to screw around and pinch hit late. I just love the power profile for this park and this power profile against Lauer, who does not grade out all that well relative to like for Steamer, 4.52 projected FIP. Andrew Martinez just asked, what pitchers am I getting to when jamming the Dodgers? I'm basically holding hands with the field here. Let's see, 35% Scherzer, 27% Urias, 39% Springs. The real driving force is I'm freeing up extra money with Odorizzi. He's in about 20% of my lineups. I'm fine with that. And Adam mentioned it on the deeper dive a little bit earlier. I have 10% Adam Aller.
Have fun with that.
Yeah,
I mean it's a numbers thing. I get it. It's just kind of what your data shows you. But yeah, Adam Aller is not a pitcher I'm going to be rostering today.
No, and like it's not as if I think that he's some guy that I should have a shit ton of. This is just it's a symptom of everything else that has happened in my lineups. I'll care a lot less about my final pitcher than I would which teams I'm getting.
Yeah, so you heard it from
any
Josh.
teams that
Josh is betting Adam Aller to win Cy Young this year.
Exactly. Talk to me about teams you're not getting to that the public are getting to. I'm curious if we're in the same spot there because I've got two pretty big ones.
All right.
One we already talked about too.
Yeah. So the one we've already talked about is the Tampa Bay Rays. It's just a lot of ownership going to a team that while it's in a good spot, there's a lot of offenses in good spots and a lot of good offenses that are in good spots. And then you just have a team in the Tampa Bay Rays who it's kind of a bad offense in a good spot that's picking up a ton of ownership. Second most popular team on the slate. So that's a team that I don't really have all that much interest in. So the other one for me, which I think you'll probably be pretty happy that I'm going to say this, is the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are also somewhat popular against Jake Odorizzi, which I have to assume that's probably something you agree with because you're pretty heavy on Odorizzi today. I don't think Odorizzi...
I have a third of the public.
Okay. Because I don't think Odorizzi is some great real life pitcher or anything like that, but also another situation where I don't think the Pirates have a great offense. And Odorizzi's been solid this year. He's a 4.15 ERA, a 4.24 expected ERA. The upside isn't crazy for him because he doesn't generate a lot of strikeouts, but I really just don't think the Pirates have a good offense. So people are playing them, I guess, because of the points per dollar salary savings. But by and large, I just don't think that's been all that necessary in a lot of baseball slates, especially because I'm playing a lot of Jeffrey Springs. We're playing a lot of Jeffrey Springs. What do I need the salary savings of the Pittsburgh Pirates for? So another team that's fairly popular is an offense that we don't have very high top stack odds on. So I don't really see a need to get to them either.
I'm with you. That's not a spot that I'm trying to get to. The other big team that I am not rostering nearly as much as the public would be the Atlanta Braves. Well under the field here. Not that it makes me feel great, but this is another park that kind of nerfs right-handed power. It's not all that big. I think Contreras is solid enough. He's a pitcher that I have in 13% of my lineups, coming in at basically no projected ownership either. So I'm a little light on the Braves. I've got Acuna in 10%, Olsen in 10%, Vaughn Grissom because he's 2,100 and basically like with the field as well. But no major outlay to the Braves. 10 of my 150 stacks are 5-man Brave stacks. So I've got about 7% Braves. We've got 17% aggregate ownership coming to the Braves. So I'm basically always going to be light on something like that when it's breaking free from the public so big on a day where no one really should be breaking from the public in a massive manner.
I'm underweight to the Braves, not quite as aggressively as you are. And actually where the Braves pop up a lot for me, though, is one-offs. So my total exposure to the Braves isn't really all that much different from the field, but the 5-man stacks are less. But once again, it's because, all right, if I'm stacking the Mets at 2% ownership, what does it really matter who the other teams are in the lineup? So that's where I get Ronald Acuna in those lineups. And I also get to Grisham, like you said. I am getting to something I'm not all that happy with, but my most rostered one-off right now is Eddie Rosario. And Rosario's just been absolute dog shit this year, but he's so cheap that he just kind of ends up coming into a lot of lineups as a salary saving play. But I am trying to cap him a little bit to bring that number down.
So are there any other teams that we should be mentioning right now in terms of stacks? We've got about 25 minutes to go until lock. You seeing anything else that you think that we should be touching on? I haven't mentioned the Phillies. That's a team that I'm quite a bit over on. I've actually got some Brewers here as well, which is probably a little controversial. A lot of that is 3-mans for the Brewers, not necessarily huge stacks. And I'm pretty okay with that. I like the Brewers lineup a little bit more than the public seems to.
So I didn't really ultimately end up getting to the Brewers. Maybe I should because I'm not playing very much of Julio Urias. I currently have, I have 5% Urias right now, which is way less than the field. So
Yeah.
if I'm that light on Urias, it probably makes sense that I should be a little bit heavier on the Brewers. But at the same time, too, it's hard for me to see the upside going up against Urias because he's been so consistently decent this year while lacking a high fantasy ceiling.
Yeah.
But if we look through his game log, like how many times has he given up a substantial amount of runs this year? Off the top of my head, it's 0. Maybe it's 1. But it's just so many starts out of Urias where it's like, hey, 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 or 6 strikeouts, where you probably weren't thrilled you played him in DFS, but you didn't want to stack against him either. Yeah, he has had.
Sounds like you're saying he's due.
No, I'm saying he's very consistent. He has had 3 starts all year where he's given up more than 3 runs. And that was with the max of 5. And he's gone 5 or 6 innings in almost every single start this year. I just feel like we know we're getting out of him by and large. The Brewers are much worse against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. So it's really hard for me to back the Brewers, even if I don't like Urias as much as the field does.
What in the world is with that exposure? How am I not getting Lux or Bellinger in basically anything? And yeah, like I said, just scattered 3-mans for the Brewers, no sort of heavy stacking or anything. And I still have Urias in 27% of the lineup. So my bigger outlay is going to Urias. I need to look at my Dodgers exposure. It's like I didn't include them. I basically just drew a line below Chris Taylor and said like, nah, I'm good.
You know what's funny? I just looked at my Dodgers stacks and I'm also overweight to the Dodgers. And it's kind of the same for me. Like I get to Chris Taylor, who's hitting in the later portion of the lineup. But other than that, I think part of it too is Justin Turner is so cheap that he ends up in a lot of those stacks. But yeah, my Dodger stacks are primarily like Betts, Turner, both Turners, and Will Smith. Like I'm not really getting to the end of the lineup guys very frequently in my Dodger stacks either.
I'm very surprised by that. Makes not a lot of sense in my head as to why that is happening.
What are their price points?
I mean, I really don't understand it for Lux because at least he's a second baseman. That's filling a unique spot. I can understand why I'm not getting to Bellinger. I have Chris Taylor projected higher than him at $400 cheaper. And obviously, Mookie Betts is going to be more appealing to me than the 9-hole Cody Bellinger. Lux is the one that makes it a little bit weirder just because at second base, I still think he fills in stacks pretty well. So quite confident that Lux and Bellinger are going to be the 2 go-to Dodgers to really screw my shit.
Yeah. So I'm looking through my lineups. I think part of it is there are 2 second basemen that stand out to me a lot as one-offs in my lineups that are probably screwing with that exposure a little bit. Like I get to Joey Wendell a decent amount as a one-off. And then I also get to Vaughn Grisham a decent amount. So I think from that standpoint, the reason was like, oh, cool, it's second baseman. It's a position it's kind of hard to fill. I think today it's much less difficult to fill than it typically is. Like there's just a lot of guys: Joey Wendell, Vaughn Grisham, Tommy Edman, Marcus Semien, Jeff McNeil, another one because I'm playing Met stacks today. There are a lot more second basemen I like today than I typically do.
I have no one more than 14%. And it just so happens Lux isn't involved in any of those. It's just so weird. It's so weird. It's making me, I'm checking now to make sure that these idiots are showing up when I run a crunch. That's fascinating. I ran 2,000 lineups. Gavin Lux showed up in 11 of them.
So, I mean, that means he's not out of it. It's just not, it's telling you he's not optimal. Should we just go bet? All right, let's do a fun exercise here. What are the odds on Gavin Lux to hit 2 homers today over at the sports book?
I mean, even just 1 homer is probably a decent enough bet at this point.
I just think it would be funny. Like if we're really saying that Josh's lineups, what could go as bad as possible? These odds are also always terrible. I've never seen a bet that was a 2-homer bet that made sense. I remember at one point where in my MLB betting video, and people leave comments and I tell them to leave bets and I give away free prizes and like subscriptions and stuff like that on my betting video. And people were trying to place the craziest bets ever at the beginning of the year. And so I'm like, guys, just win a bet, because people were parlaying. It was like, I'm doing like Aaron Judge hit 2 homers with like Trey Turner to 2 homers, and the odds were never like what they should be. It was like, I'm parlaying these 2 guys for multi-homer games and getting 40-1 odds. And that's when I started looking at these bets, and they were crazy odds. But anyway, all right, Dodgers, Gavin Lux to 2 homers today. Let's see, how dumb is this number?
If you get to 1 homer, I'd like to know that number as well. Maybe I'll get to it before you.
They don't even have him listed to have a multi-homer game. So let's see, for 1 homer. So they're saying it's impossible, basically.
You would think he'd show up a little bit more than 11 times with 600% randomness.
He is plus 870. He is plus 870 to homer today.
There you go. Print that money, folks. Plus 870. Odd Shopper's #1 bet. I'm just kidding. Don't listen to me for that one. I'm actually going to look at that.
It's the fade Josh bet of the day.
Gavin Lux on Odd Shopper, presenting sponsor, by the way. Go to oddshopper.com and get all of the goods for no cost whatsoever. Are you into sports betting? If your answer is yes, then you should absolutely be using this. Shop around, get the best lines, avoid the hold as much as you possibly can. You have all of this at a fingertip. If you like player props, even better. We post the projection, the expected win rate, the expected ROI, all that good stuff, and you're still a click away from getting directly to that bet. If you don't sports bet, if you aren't in a state where that's legal, I still think this will help you out tremendously for DFS. If you're trying to think about coin flip decisions, you could take a look at a couple props. That might help dictate some of your decisions. Just use Odd Shopper. We don't love the Gavin Lux total home run bets today, or to hit a home run, which is at this moment a negative 25% ROI bet.
Yeah, some of the home run bets are tough sometimes. Gavin Lux. So there actually is, because I had just looked up the number on FanDuel, but some of it is also a benefit of Odd Shoppers. You see where the best bets are anywhere. So if you guys really want to fade Josh and place a bet that our data says is a bad bet today, you can get Gavin Lux up to plus 900 to homer today. Those are the best odds to fade Josh.
Over half homer plus 750, negative 37% expected ROI. Thanks, Gavin Lux.
Isn't it weird that some books have it to hit a home run and some have it over under 0.5 home runs? Like, why are we doing over unders for home runs? Like, it's never like somebody's an over under of 1.5 homers.
It's just easier.
Is it?
Probably.
I think to hit
you got to change like the formatting of that from like a yes no question. Like everything is already set up to be a bet of like sort of over or under a number, so it just keeps the consistency. I'm guessing.
By the way, the Reds Phillies game is going to start in delay.
Okay.
So let's see what we have looking at the radar there. Yeah, so it's definitely going to rain in Philadelphia. But with that said, if they're willing to wait it out, it's going to be done raining there in about 2 hours. So maybe does that introduce some risk to the equation? Yeah, but at the same time, too, if they're willing to wait it out, the weather's clear for the rest of the night. There's just like 2 hours of rain here.
Okay.
I hate having to deal with the weather in baseball sometimes. Because
it's so annoying.
Because right there, I pull up the radar, look at the weather, and it's like, all right, well, there's rain there, but there's a clear opening to play, and then it's just what do they decide to do? Like, there's no science. Like, there's science in predicting the weather, but there's no science in when is the game going to get postponed or play.
I hate it so much. Every team should play indoors. It's dumb as shit. You should never be in a position that people can show up at the park and then they don't get to see the game for reasons like the weather, which is fully something that we can stop at this point.
Yeah, or we just invent devices to control the weather. That's what I've been working on. We got tools and data for everything else over at Stokastic. We got to tell Alex to figure out how to control the weather. He's got the funds for it now.
Like they should just have there should just be some sort of indoor stadium near wherever they play. That's the backup plan if it rains. Like you got to play it like a COVID game and there's just not fans.
Yeah, I mean, or just the retractable roofs, also pretty easy.
Yes. Well, good luck putting a retractable roof on like Wrigley.
Yeah, well, I mean, just knock that stadium down. The thing's built out of bricks.
I agree. It made me so sick to even be near it.
Oh, that is true. People don't realize that when we were in Chicago, a lot of people think that Josh was getting sick due to the alcohol. Absolutely not. Josh holds his alcohol like a pro. It was just he was so close to Wrigley. It was a reaction to the ivy. It was allergies.
Yes, exactly. I forgot to take Claritin before I got to the park. I just couldn't hold it down.
That was it. That was the only issue.
Yep, exactly. I thought it would have been better. It just wasn't. So do you want to go position by position, try and hit on sort of the best cash options that really exist for today's slate?
Yeah, I'm just looking through really quick my stacks to see if there's anything that we haven't talked about yet that I'm getting to in a pretty big way. Oh, we didn't talk about the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going a little bit underrepresented today. They're going up against Drew Smiley, who the big key here is that Smiley is a left-hand pitcher going up against the Cardinals, and the Cardinals have just been death on lefties this year. Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt in the middle of the lineup. Albert Pujols good again all of a sudden. Have you looked at his numbers this year? It's the most insane thing ever.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Yeah, he's having a legitimately really good year. So Smiley's numbers this year are not awful, but his strikeouts are down this year. And if you're giving up contact to this Cardinals offense as a left-hand pitcher, it could certainly spell issues for you. Zips has him projected with a 4.62 ERA the rest of the year. And, he has been pretty poor for the last few years, and it's a limited sample size this year, only 76 innings. So I don't really believe in Drew Smiley at this point in his career. And then we've got Albert Pujols, who, he's crushing this year. He has, what is his WRC plus up to? His WRC plus
120 something, 140 something.
It is way higher than that.
140 something.
141.
Albert Pujols. Adam said it this morning. I just couldn't remember it.
And for reference on how crazy this is, he is 42 years old. The last time he had a WRC plus over 90, so not even saying league average. The last time he had a WRC plus over 90 was 2016, and he's a 141 WRC plus this year.
That's 2 years before this site started.
Yeah, it's been a long, and also on the potential steroid point, because people have had rumors of that in the past. If you're in your 40s, why the hell not? What's the downside? They catch you and you get suspended. The other side of the coin is you don't take it and you can't play. Yeah. I'm telling you, you get into your 40s, you're a professional athlete, take everything on the counter.
Yep, 100%. Completely agree. I got to give it up to, where did it go? Joseph Ramirez said Josh wasn't adapted to the Chi-town altitude.
Yeah, it was the high altitude, because people forget there's that lake over there, and you're a good 10 feet above lake level.
Yeah, I know. And I was off balance all the time from the wind. It was just tough.
Yeah, it was rough weather conditions.
All right, you ready to talk potential cash options across the board?
Yep.
Best plays at each position if you're playing a cash game. At catcher today, I think there's a couple options you can go with, whether that's Will Smith, JT Realmuto, or if you're paying down, I think the other option is going to be Travis d'Arnaud.
Yeah, the answer is d'Arnaud for me. The 3,000 price tag, I think, opens up so many possibilities in the lineup. It doesn't hurt also that he's the most highly projected catcher in terms of ownership today. It's only by a narrow margin over Will Smith, but still, just because of the price point on d'Arnaud, and I think he actually could end up being way more popular than that in cash games because of how many people are gravitating towards the Braves in general. But d'Arnaud is the answer for me.
There we go. At first base, I wish this filter just happened faster for me, but unfortunately it doesn't. I don't know why. It's like Mac Excel is different than PC Excel, but whatever. First base, a lot of spread out ownership here for today. So I think that a lot of options would be viable. Hoskins, Olsen, Ramirez, Miranda, Goldschmidt, Arias, and Paredes are all 10% or higher. If we're being perfectly honest, though, Rhys Hoskins, Matt Olson, probably the two leaders in the clubhouse here.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wants to say, if you're looking to punt the position, Albert Pujols is the flat min. His salary never gets moved no matter what he does. He's going up against a lefty today. I just mentioned how good Pujols' numbers have been this year. And against left-handed pitching, Albert Pujols WRC plus against lefties this year, 225. He's min price. I really don't mind him as a cash play. He is destroying right now.
Albert Pujols in the year 2022. You heard it here first, folks.
225 WRC plus against lefties this year.
Should we assume that continues?
No, but I think that he also should not be min price right now.
Second base. Tommy Edman feels like a really decent answer here. Vaughn Grissom at 2,100 is just going to make your lineups work a little bit more if you can't pay up anywhere else. Do you see anybody else that we should be mentioning here?
I think Joey Wendell would also make sense, but
Yeah.
I've given up so many guys that are cheap at this point. So like Vaughn Grisham, yeah, but I can't just be like, oh, here's the least expensive player at every single position. I guess I say instead of Pujols at first base, maybe I go Goldschmidt, and then I'm just giving people out some more plays that are a little more pricey because, or else like I think Vaughn Grisham probably would make the most sense to me. But
Yeah.
like I said, then I'm just giving out the cheapest guys everywhere. So yeah, Grisham, and then I guess I'll change my first base answer from Pujols to Goldschmidt.
Third base feels pretty safe here. To me, it's Austin Riley, unless you're just looking for salary savings, at which point it might be Brian Anderson at that point. I don't think we go to Miranda or Yandy Diaz because I think we just have to go to Austin Riley.
If you have the space to spend up, it's Austin Riley. If you need the salary savings, it is Brian Anderson. Austin Riley, another hitter in the middle of that Braves lineup who is going to be pretty popular today. Braves' most popular stack on the slate, but we care less about that for cash games. So Riley.
Yep. Shortstop. Be surprised if it's not Dansby Swanson. I could see a scenario where you get to Trey Turner or Carlos Correa. Those two names are never wrong answers when you're trying to get to somebody, but I think Swanson looks like the best combination of price and ownership for today.
Yeah, just based on him being the most popular out of those guys, I think that's the tiebreaker. By the way, the weather's really weird right now for me because like I don't live that far from New York. So right side of my window, I have 3 windows in front of me. Right side, totally clear. No clouds in the sky. The left side over here, thunder and lightning, and I could see rain in the distance. So what does that mean for the Mets-Yankees game today? I'm still playing it, but I'm ready to get screwed somehow.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Dansby Swanson for me, by the way, also.
Okay. And then finally, outfield, a little bit more difficult to actually hash out. Ronald Acuna at 5,400 is close to a lock from a cash game perspective. Jake Fraley is basically free at 2,500. Brian Anderson, as we mentioned, 2,300, also free. A lot of pay up options that are just obvious, whether you get to Arozarena, Buxton, Schwarber. Those guys are just always sort of available in these spots. Am I missing any very obvious names here?
No, for me, the pay up options are Buxton and Acuna. Those are the two guys I would gravitate towards the most. I get a lot of people probably want to play Arozarena against Tucker Davidson. I just think Buxton's such a better player than Arozarena is, so I would tend to lean more towards Buxton. So Acuna and Buxton on the high end. If I'm saving salary, it would be Jake Fraley or I guess Brian Anderson because he's outfield eligibility as well. So I'll throw 3 in here. Fraley, Anderson, and Eddie Rosario would be the ones that make the most sense to me.
I see 2 separate people have mentioned Newt Bar here. That is not an answer. You guys should be taking him out of cash games.
Yeah, not Lars Nootbaar. Let me see. Where do I even?
I generally like him, but he is a bad cash play today, unequivocally.
Yeah. So here's where Nootbaar, and I have him in tournament lineups, and I am almost positive the reason people are going to say Nootbaar is because he scored a lot of fantasy points lately, which is never a good reason to play somebody in MLB DFS as a hitter. But against righties, Nootbaar hits leadoff a lot of times and is really cheap, so it makes a whole bunch of sense. Against lefties, though, he hits 9th in the order. It's not nearly as appealing.
No, there are multiple guys at his price point that are ahead of him by multiple fantasy points. If you're playing Nootbaar in cash today, you're playing cash incorrectly.
Yeah, totally agree. And in terms of Nootbaar's splits this year, lefty or righty, he has a 71. Here's another reason too. So I don't know whether the Cardinals whether Nootbaar's at bats have come more against left-handed or right-handed pitchers lately, but he's a 71 WRC plus against lefties this year and a 149 WRC plus against righties. Massive splits, lefty versus righty.
Yeah. Let's talk pitchers, which I think there's only 3 answers. You're either double paying up to Scherzer and Urias, or it's Jeffrey Springs plus one of them, and I assume that one would be Scherzer.
Yeah, it's Springs and Scherzer for me. I get that. We'll do one quick weather check here. I'm sticking with both the Phillies game and the Mets game in my lineups. Like I said, there's a very clear opening for them to play in the Philly game if they wait it out. It could be a little sketchy because it might rain for a couple hours. But in terms of the Yankees-Mets game, I mean, the rain's supposed to stop in 35 minutes or so, according to the radar I'm looking at right now. So I'm pretty unconcerned about that.
Yep. I haven't made any changes. I'm full steam ahead with both of those games. Whether that breaks well for me or not, the answer is likely not.
It's in God's hands now.
Then I'm definitely not in good shape. I have not been the nicest to his name over the past 37 years of my life.
All right. Well, maybe Josh will walk outside in the storm and get hit by lightning today.
I didn't get it in the middle of a gigantic field during 2 separate rainstorms while I was camping, so I was able to dodge that electrical bullet for at least one day.
All right. News God. Did you not listen to what I just said? Because he's saying the Philly game isn't safe. What did I just say? I said the game isn't safe, but I'm playing it.
Yeah.
What do we do?
I am also playing it, and I don't like it. Red Skittles, he certainly doesn't. I'm quite confident.
Yeah, if people want to be totally risk adverse, take it out of the player pool. It's going to rain for about 2 hours, at least according to the radar I just looked at. And if they're willing to wait it out, then they're cool to play. If they don't want to wait it out, they also might do that. I'm playing it though.
I didn't even think about, like I'm just moving forward. I don't care. It's more fun that way.
I mean, I care, but at the same time too, it's like I don't have any control over it.
Yeah, I also can't control for it. That's for sure. Do you have a lot of Phillies?
Yeah, it's one of my more rostered stacks.
Same.
Not willing to change it.
Nope. Likewise. I should. I mean, I just don't want to get off all the Reds that I have.
Yeah. Let's see. Phillies. Yeah, Phillies are one of my most exposed stacks. The Mets still number 1, but Phillies are up there.
Let's see. Anything else you want to touch on? We've got about 3 minutes to go before we get out of here and before we get to lock. No real questions or anything trickling in that I can see.
By the way, we should point out, if anybody's questions in the Discord channel, one of the benefits of a Stokastic Plus Platinum membership, you can throw questions in them. They don't have to be baseball related. We like when they're baseball related, but they don't have to be. And you can ask us questions. We'll answer them on the shows. We've gotten away from it a little bit during baseball, but part of it too is we just get so many more questions during basketball in Discord than we do for baseball. But if you guys ever have questions in Discord, add us during the show.
It's also like questions that are more difficult in baseball of like, when it's a one-off 1v1, like that is about as coin flippy as that question's ever going to get. Like we did get a question a little bit ago that we're not going to be able to be helpful for this now, but who are some good third base one-offs for a DK GPP?
Let's go to the top batters tool.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll pull up
like so much of this is like everybody to a degree, depending on what's in the rest of your lineup.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got like Max Muncy at 4% ownership or whatever it is to me probably the best GPP play you can find, unless you want Justin Turner, who is also the same sort of situation here, basically unowned and like good hitters.
Nolan Arenado is always going to make sense to me. He also has fairly low ownership. He's projected for under 10% ownership, a 7% owned Nolan Arenado against a weak left-handed pitcher. That's always going to make sense for tournaments. Let's see. Other one-offs that stand out to me. Alec Bohm would be another one. If you guys are okay with the weather situation there, there's risk there. But like I said, I'm not really changing anything from that. I don't really
I got Brent
know
Batty quite a bit at no ownership.
Yeah. Those I think are pretty clearly the two strongest ones for me. Alec Bohm and Nolan Arenado.
Muncy and Turner for me, but I don't think that's going to be the most surprising thing in the world, given how much I've been filleting the Dodgers for the past hour.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. By the way, Max Muncy just signed a contract extension like 30 minutes ago also. Does it mean anything? Probably not, but it's something to bring up.
You know what does mean a lot to me? This is the worst part of playing the Dodgers. My nemesis in chat has been talking of the Dodgers as well today. So if I succeed, that clown is going to be gloating tomorrow morning.
Quick answer from Swanson79. He wants to know my favorite single entry stack. That is the Mets for me today. That's my single entry team.
It's the Dodgers for me.
And then Rabasho asked us a question. Do we think they start shortening the starts of guys like Scherzer, same as Urias, once we get closer to the end of the season? Yes. I think it's more of an issue for the Dodgers right now than other teams. because the Dodgers are the only team where like it's done basically. The Astros, it's pretty close also. The Dodgers have an 18-game lead in the standings. Like that is so much more significant than the Mets have a 4-game lead over the Braves. It's a cushion, but it's not to the point where like, all right, let's stop pitching Scherzer and DeGrom. The Astros are getting close to
It's also Scherzer. Like, good luck telling him he's getting limited.
Yeah, he'll just punch you in the face. Like,
yeah, he's like, no, I'm just gonna go out and pitch, and you can drag me off if you'd like. That's why I shook my head at first. I was just like, if the question is for Scherzer, my answer is no. That he's just gonna go out there because he's a crazy person. Reasonable minds would limit these guys down the stretch.
Yeah, and maybe Scherzer will be more welcoming to that because he spent a lot of time on the injured list this year. He's missed almost half his starts this season, or maybe not half, but maybe like a third of his starts. So he might be more common sense with a decision like that than he would have been in previous years, because I don't remember him really getting hurt like that before.
Well, that'll do it, folks. We are locked. Thank you for joining us on MLB Live Before Lock. It was a good one. I'm going to go cheer for my Dodgers and hope that these games play early. I think that Greg is probably going to do the same. So good luck, everybody. Good sweats tonight. Enjoy yourselves. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Peace.